Bringing our special board meeting to order for the Santa Cruz County Board of Education. And we're going to do roll call.
Trustee Acosta? Trustee Kyle? Here. Vice President Larson?
Here.
Trustee Roth? Trustee Sanchez?
Here.
Trustee Van Allen? President Williams?
Here.
Student Trustee Guillen Martinez? Student Trustee Moore?
Here. And we have 4 of 7 currently. Form. Thank you. Do we have any board members per SB 707?
No request for virtual remote.
All right. With the help of Dr. Sabah, we'll be doing the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you're able to rise, please do so. And ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion? Vice President? And second by Trustee Sanchez. All right. Anybody for public comment? I don't see anybody in our gallery online.
No request for public comment.
All right, excellent. We'll move on to the board workshop. And at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Sabah for introductions.
Yes, thank you. We are very fortunate to have Mike join us again as our Mike Walsh, you should be familiar with Mike. He's somebody who's been working with CSBA and has been brings a wealth of leadership experience to working with school boards, travels around the country and maybe the world doing this kind of work. And so we're really grateful to have him to help us build up our skill set and continue to be as effective a board as we possibly can as a governance team. So welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Maybe we could go around just officially. So I'll introduce myself, Ferris Sabah, County Superintendent of Schools.
Stacey Kyle, trustee for Capitola Live Oak SoCal area.
You could add on pronouns. I apologize. I use he, him pronouns.
She, her.
Ash, student trustee, specifically for all ed, and he.
Rachel Williams, she, her, trustee for sort of Aptos area, a little bit of slice of SoCal.
Will Sanchez, trustee for Watsonville and a little bit of the outskirts.
Quentin Larson, Santa Cruz and the North Coast, half of Santa Cruz and the North Coast, and Bonnie Duke.
Mike Walsh, him, and CSBA, Butte County Office of Education, past president for CSBA, somebody who needs to take a nap, basically. So, yeah, and the travel, we were just laughing because I use an app on my phone to keep track of where my travel and where I'm supposed to go, and it gives me the annual year review. And it actually says I slowed down last year. And I'm like, you lied. It doesn't feel like it. Lots going on. And so I'm excited whenever I get a chance to be here and have conversations, because this is the stuff that it kind of lights my fire. And so to hear that you're not a morning person, don't worry, we'll fix that. I'm not a morning person either, but it's still the conversations. I kind of like this. And so it kind of gets me going even on some mornings. And so what I want to do is, again, those of you who've been with me, you know that it's your conversation. Those of you that haven't been with me, it's still your conversation. And I tend to hide, and I like you talking to each other. And then instead of answering me, it's really talk across the tables towards this group here. Because as a board member, and I'm actually in my last year, I've decided 16 years to mess things up in education. This should be my last time. And that somebody else fix my mess now. So I'm excited about it. Looking forward to seeing what this is like. Doesn't mean I'm going to disappear. My board knows better. So, but it means that there's a lot of conversation that I've seen over the 15 years I've done this. And the only thing that changes sometimes are the crisis that we're dealing with in terms of this emergency. Other than that, what changes is that something's going to change. And I just have no clue what it is at any time. And the conversations that I think are the best ones to have is where we're going to focus today. And so I like to start with this notion of team building. And that team building isn't an activity, by the way. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but a lot lot of people think team building is when you do the spaghetti sticks and the marshmallows and the blue tape and you build something and you, oh, we did a team building activity, yay, and check it off the list. No, that's not team building. Team building is what we're gonna do all day. Team building is a conversation about how are we going to be with each other while we're working on whatever it is we're supposed to be working on. That's all it is. So we do those little team building activities because ultimately someone goes, hey, you know what this reminds me of? Oh my gosh, the same thing. I was thinking that just now. And you have the conversation that you should have had because you did the little thing. I like to skip building the little things and just go right to the conversation. So now to make those conversations a little bit easier, I am going to have you go ahead and just pair up with whoever you want. Like you guys are in pairs now, naturally, and that's fantastic if you want to stay that way. Because I'm going to ask you to have some conversations with each other, and because really team building is awkward because you're supposed to have those super deep conversations, but it's like, I don't really know you that well. Like we've talked a lot, but a super deep conversation, you might be a little nervous to have one of those with me. So I'll give you a little chance to get to know each other. And the way it works is simple. I need to set my timer. Okay, so it looks like you've paired off perfectly. You did exactly as I had planned it. All right, so I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes. And what I want you to do, here it is you're just going to do the thing, I call it I go, you go. And the way it works is I would tell you, Ferris, one thing about me, and then you would tell me one thing about you. And then I go, and then you go, and then I back and forth for 2 minutes. And it's as simple as that. And there'll be a test later, but for right now, it's as simple as I go, you go, I go, you go. For 2 minutes, anything you want to just name, like, well, I live in Oroville. Well, I live here in this area. I was an interim manager one time. Whatever you want to do. I have 10 grandkids. They just feel like 17 because they cost me a lot of money. Same thing, right? So congratulations. There you go. 2 minutes. I go, you go. Ready? Go.
I used to grow.
I'm senior too.
It's my son's cut. I've lost all my trouble. I'm sorry.
I got baptized in the last year. I've grown up in California. I've lived in, I want to attend and potentially get my master's for many years, and I love it too. Actually, I'm gonna say, when I moved here, I rented an apartment. And I love the area so much, we bought a house across the street from it. I didn't even want to leave the neighborhood. I moved to Santa Cruz County 20 years ago, and within the first year said I never want to leave my house.
Bruce, do you want to join us? We're doing a little activity.
Right around the corner. Let me get before you know.
You might need a minute to catch your breath. That's
Catch your
okay.
breath
And
and
get
then
some
join us
coffee.
whenever you're ready.
That's fine.
What was it?
It's, oh, okay. I'm not used to it. Oh, my son, you know what?
You know what? I 100% agree because Alan are like a while back and I was like,
Greater
"Hey,
Shoreline, and we just signed up for
I got my first car.
Yeah.
I got my first car when I was 18, got a full-time job and went out and got it.
30 more seconds. Good to see you again. We're just laughing and talking right now. So dive in on that conversation and catch your breath. We're good.
Growing up.
I don't go to the doctor enough.
Well, people would have said, well,
Part of
it
it.
was like, it was.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time. Please look at your partner and say it's good to get to know you.
Good to get to know you.
Oh, wait a minute, there's more. There's more. You're in one for your partner already. I love it. That was fun, but I got to go do some work now. All right. So, no, I think this is the thing where I want to give you a chance. As you were going back and forth, every now and then what I notice is that when people do that, suddenly they think, oh my God, you did that too? And then they want to have a little more of the conversation, right? So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you that same 2 minutes back, but I'm going to tell you get to be nosy, like the two nosiest people on the planet, Dr. Oprah or Dr. Phil, whoever your favorite is right now. And the way it works is you get 1 minute each to do the follow-up interview. So now you get to be nosy and ask that question about, wait, you said, You tried to sneak that under the radar. I want to know what in the world possessed you to do something like that. So I get to be really nosy, and I'll just let you know when it's time to switch, all right? And then we'll figure out how we just roll Bruce into this, maybe like an interview with the whole room. And so again, I'll just go, if you get 1 minute each, and I'll just say switch, and then the other person becomes the guest on the Dr. Oprah Field show. So congratulations to whoever has the most brothers and sisters. You go first. You're the first guest on the Dr. Oprah Field show.
I'm the first guest.
Oh, you're the guy.
Okay. Is that because
So,
of hair?
my sister's the first guest. Okay.
How you were able to raise $2,800? What did you have to give to save up for that car?
As a host.
I worked at Santa Cruz between Rock. I would say what I gave up was a lot of patience because they did not have good working conditions, and I actually was in a class action lawsuit.
It's impressive because a lot of people have those goals, right? It's like, oh, I want to do this. But honestly, like 90-95% of people have those goals, but they don't really actually act on it. It's hard. It's to change your habits, to change your what you're used to doing.
So I used a method of response to help myself from financial
And so my father is possible, but they left.
Did you feel that people played a crucial part, whether it was having them join you in the business or for cutting them off? They weren't
But you could have used it for something else.
And switch. It is now the other person's turn to be a guest on the show.
They've been encouraging this last year. So now I get to
Yes, please. It's interesting background, really good question. So, I am considering my daughter currently is
I am
taking her
actually
San
at
Francisco.
my,
Great question. So, I grew up with church programs at age of 10.
I think there's something psychological
There
about
till college, went to Santa Barbara and then stayed there for grad school. And while I was in grad school, I was actually when I was just going to museum. And so I was looking for jobs, and there was a nonprofit up there called the Center for Return Teaching. It was on.
also when I went to the doctor.
And this is where it was, right? I ended up getting as well. That's why I moved up here. The normal
Getting to that
2000
point
I was
where
still ABD, and then finished my education while I was up here working.
I think it's somebody who's tall and
And I loved it. It was policy organization focused on teacher work. So it was really tough. So we contracted with Sarai.
but it's close to
Policy recommendations go to Sacramento.
20 seconds left in your show, Dr. Oprah, Dr. Phil. 18 seconds left.
Yeah, exactly. And it would have to be like.
so she also had a similar so my hope is that we can support not only about
I did that until that's the goal.
there's walking
I'm thinking, it's a commitment.
That
I was told prior to,
is time.
and then,
So we'll roll you into
Another
your last
one. I can't-
conversation.
I can't
Go
live
ahead and
in this
take you
town.
right into your last conversation. The one that I think is the reason why we're actually in the room today is, and not that the conversations so far haven't been, because there's a part of it, I'll talk about that later. I would love to give you the conversation around, so what drew you to this role? Really, like you're here, and everybody always says because I'm here for the kids. I mean, I've never met anyone who ever says, I'm here because I want to get wealthy and famous. Never had that happen. Everybody always in a board, I'm here for the students. Yeah. Okay, yeah, but why? What drew you to this? Why is it something that's so important to you? And really get an understanding of what makes that relevance. Because again, you're giving up a Saturday, right? You give up all the extra time to do this. And I know the governor said you can have a pay raise, but we were doing all that, there was hardly any pay involved in it. Right? Someone looked at me one time and they found out how much money I don't get paid. They're like, what? Hey, what's wrong with you? I don't know. So, but yeah, talk a little bit about what drew you to this role, what keeps you involved, and all of those things. What is it about this role in governance and education? And so whoever was the last guest on the Dr. Oprah Field show, congratulations, you're back on as the guest. We just went to commercial. You're back. And so continue your interview. We'll give you 2 minutes. Really dive in. What draws you to this role?
Okay, Bruce, join us.
Yes, please. Slide Bruce on in there.
So.
Yes, on the spot, here, this is interesting. Education is because I did have a son who did not fit the traditional
There's two aspects of
education, being
One, I wanted somebody on the
34,
board that
35 students. He was diagnosed in third grade,
represented,
ADHD and dyslexia and stuff, and so I tried really hard to keep them mainstream.
and also I wanted somebody who
And it really
had
was
recent
the program
experience.
of education that,
I was 20.
that opened up to the possibility of getting a high school diploma. He
So I was
still
able to start
went to Delta. He went to, I think he tried Elizabeth, and it really took,
The person who ran against me, she was 17.
and before they
It's been a while since she was.
that just really dove it in and really got him and said, hey, we can do this together, and just kind of
Second one,
went through it. And he was able to
I
get
wanted to improve. I feel like it
his
has
high school diploma. And after that, he went on to which he really wanted to do his entire life. And so it made me want to support
not necessarily tension, but
school
looking
district
down on
that
or separation
empowers
between
students to
like
find
responsibilities and
their high school diploma, because we all have different paths.
kind of
We all have different
responsibilities.
strengths and challenges and teachers that understand it. And
That's
care
why
about the
specifically for
students
centers
in that
like
way, and knowing that they don't fit in.
being like a
I
responsibility.
think I wanted to be a part of keeping that going. So that's kind of where I choose
Or
kind of education.
again, I think things have gotten better.
The district, because I was asked to like,
I feel like
it hurts here, like I wanna, if something opens up here, this is where I go.
Doing a good thing for the kids, you know. But,
Okay,
non-corporate,
okay, not for conversation.
First time.
As your guest finishes that answer, go ahead and switch.
When a vacancy
As your guest finishes the answer, it's a natural transition to a switch.
So I went up for reelection because it's a lot of information. It's a lot
then people started calling me and saying, hey, Bruce, are you thinking of this? And then the other thing that we hear,
just didn't work to run a school. I do.
I have a lot of
I
background
feel
in
like I understand.
politics.
Really like it. I feel like we know
Labor politics. And what I kept hearing from people is
intelligibly.
there was a period when the board here was under the influence of some things that
Why did you do that?
I had a little more time to think about
are
labor.
still around.
For the kid, another 2 weeks.
So the labor people, like, lots of we need another voice on that.
Preschool,
Get back to those ways that it was.
out of every college, you can't do it.
And so I applied, there were 6 people that applied.
Wow, now, right.
You know, thank you, daughter's
Why am I here? Just like, the short answer is a long answer. The answer is John Leopold called me. That's the short answer, and I told him no. Yeah, by the end of the conversation, I was like, I'm looking at what's on, and I'll let you know by the end of the weekend. That's the short answer. But the deeper answer is, kind of always known, I would say. My background is in education policy, and like I said, at those big tables, you have the conversations, and I always figured I would probably run and sit on a school board at some point, like when I wasn't, maybe not this early.
Consider yourself someone who's curious, that likes a challenge.
If you remembered, I applied for the Live Oak open chair, and that did not go as I had expected. And so later, people were telling me like rejection is protection. Like it's probably a good thing you weren't the right match, and I think they were right. I was not the good match at the time. So it's kind of that was painful experience. And when Rose stepped down, she reached out to me. Too raw, too soon, not doing it. But then when then the seat opened up again, I thought maybe this was what was meant to happen. Maybe this was the seat I was supposed to take, and I'm really happy. So that's how I got here, and I like it because there's a little less drama than what I would have inherited. But also, it's an area of education I don't know as much about, given the areas I have worked in. It's like a really good learning and growth opportunity. So I think it was exactly right. Masterpiece was babies. Oh, thank you.
Well, I mean, my story is a little bit short. I have to say that the reason I came to this county office was my bucket.
Yeah. Nice. I'm excited to have you on board to work alongside you. Yeah, considering your time as
have
well.
different needs and
Yes,
needs,
I've always been
you know.
with county personnel that has been good just through this role.
My goal is that, hey, you know, student
That are able to have
We
have
have
the
been
goals
through
and the
a year later
graduations, stuff, you know.
has been really
Sounds
good.
like the work is
Pursuing their son.
prevention, and I think that it's not just there's a situation to address.
Really serious about looking for a more education.
About 30 more seconds.
And
About 30 more
the
seconds.
same thing, even earlier on, trying to get
City Hall.
teachers
It's a regular region.
accommodation.
He's actually in our house because he's on that. So he was giving me the regions. And she would all
Check it out,
represent.
the calculator, but, you know, started doing when the work was done.
I think they're all beautiful. I think if it was inappropriate, I don't think it would have put up there.
Yeah.
When am I interviewing? So that's something that we're talking about and something that we need to do pretty soon. Right, it's like it's sporty, so it's kind of exciting.
So it's now time
Maybe this year.
for your test. It's now time for your test. Here we go.
You were already on the board.
Seniors have no.
Oh, okay.
And this is, hopefully it's not an awkward test, but it might be. We'll see.
You had just started.
All right. So here's the way the test works is you just spent time getting to know your guest, your neighbor, your guest. And what I'd love for you to do is introduce your guest and something that you really gained from them that you weren't, that was kind of news to you. It's kind of like, oh my goodness, I didn't understand that part. You talk about the I go, you go, or the interview, or what drew you to the role, or even, any of that conversations you were just having. Now, you're not introducing your guest to me, just as an opportunity for you to practice. You're introducing your guests to each other. I'm listening, I'm eavesdropping, but I might disappear or hide behind here, so you stop talking to me. This is your conversation, not mine. I'm just hanging out. I'm a conversation starter. So please, who would like to go first and introduce your guests to the rest of the?
Everyone, this is our student trustee, Ash. Ash grew up here in Santa Cruz County. One thing that he doesn't like is the new vehicle that's called Santa Cruz because it's ugly, and I 100% agree. He said it's a shame that it's named Santa Cruz. I agree again. Ash wears facial jewelry, and he now has a size 8. I don't know if they're called a gauge, right? A gauge. Let's see here. One of the reasons, while in school at 15, he got his first vehicle, worked very hard, had an interesting experience working at the boardwalk, and not completely positive, but that did help him get his first vehicle. $2,800 for what I believe was a Colt. I didn't get to dig into that any deeper, but I really wanted to. Did not have the time. And the reason why they joined the County Board of Education was because of personal experience and wanted to affect a more positive change, counter to what the experience they had, getting involved in the COE part education and being diagnosed with some of his learning challenges. So it was really great getting to know and share with Ash.
I can go next. This is Trustee Williams. She has decided to become bigger in public education because she felt very moved when her son was having difficulties throughout his school with his own neurodivergence and having the basically school system not really work for him at all, and going to alternative education here. And so she really wanted to work with alternative education and this, like county office of ed. So she was really hoping to get a position here. That way she could, hope to help and influence, like I said, the board. And she also, grew up, no, I forgot.
Last 20 years.
Oh, last
been
20
here.
years, you've been in Santa Cruz, and she's like, I don't want to leave here. And grew up in a cold.
Very religious organization that some would say was a cult. That was our connection. They bought a car, I went on. So much in common.
Wants to get her master's in like it's not business stuff, like this kind of stuff. I forgot what it's called. Administration. It's like it's not accounting. It's not
Today.
okay, yeah.
Go next, I'll introduce Dr. Stacy Kyle. Stacy has been living in the area for over 20 years in the Live Oak area. Has two children, a boy and a girl, who are one at Harvard, another who's going to be going to Harvard soon. She worked in educational policy for a long time, and as she was getting her doctorate, and was involved in kind of setting educational policy. And so she always thought about becoming a school board member. She thought it would be something that would happen later on. She attempted to get on the board at Live Oak during the difficult times, and that effort was unsuccessful. But when the opportunity came up a little bit later, second opportunity came up a little bit later to join our board, she was excited to join, because she feels like because she brings such a wealth of knowledge in educational policy, and wanting to be part of an organization that is working on the ground and providing support. And we didn't really talk about personal kind of stuff too much. It was mostly kind of our stories. So I think that's I'd like to hear. Welcome to please welcome Stacy.
Good job.
Camera pans back.
That's right.
Bruce, do you want to talk about Ferris's role in the COE, and I'll do the intro to it, his background? Okay. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Ferris Sabah. And Dr. Sabah immigrated to the United States from Iraq, but also went to Ecuador for middle and high school years. Sorry.
Whole audience, you got your
Right.
whole audience there.
Let me look at Ava. Okay, so he moved from Iraq to the US, but then also spent his sort of formative years in Ecuador, before finally settling in California. And he has two sons, one of whom is at UC Davis, one of whom is at Diamond Tech High School. Wow, now I'm drawing a blank. Okay, hold on. There's so much good stuff he said, and I can't step on Bruce's toes.
He's got steel toe shoes.
How about I just pass it to Bruce? So I don't use up all my time.
So as Ferris built his career in education, he worked for a long time in education, which is a crucial, important thing. He was working for Monterey County Office of Education, and knew Michael Watkins, the previous superintendent, had mentioned that he was looking for maybe a better, more fun job. And to Michael, and somewhat later, Michael called him up and said, "Hey, why don't you come over and work over here, and let's just see what happens." And appointed Ferris as his deputy superintendent. That was not too long after I got on the board. That was 2015. I think pretty much immediately, aside from that, Michael set such a good tone and was highly regarded statewide as a superintendent and a leader in education, that the team of Michael and Ferris was just cooking. And it was really obvious how much Ferris brought to the board. And so when Michael decided to retire, he finished out his term and feeling that for a role like this, it's best if the person is actually elected and not, filling a vacancy. And lo and behold, by that point, I think Ferris was well enough known and totally liked across the board and across the county that he ended up running unopposed and got strongly elected, and has been serving with us since then, and brings his background, his multicultural background, you might call it, to the present work, and is, to me, one of the most admirable public officials I know.
So you added some extra.
I was gonna say, I know
There's
you
some
know.
sugar added in that. Thank you for that.
I think it was accurate.
Thank you so
But nevertheless.
Oh,
It's turned into the lifetime achievement.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for being here.
Can I introduce
Oh, yeah.
our trustee Van Allen?
I'm toothless. I rushed over here and forgot. So, I'm sorry if I look older than I think I am.
Trustee Van Allen, I just know about his journey to serving for the COE board. And it was from a long time of work and effort working with students around, and I hope I don't get this wrong, but feel free to edit, around the river, and exposing and educating them to sort of the San Lorenzo River and the native plants that, we would ideally want there, and the restoration of the river. And in that role, worked with the COE and got to know the COE and really learned to respect the COE and appreciate the work. And so when an opening came up, he applied for it, was encouraged to apply for it with his political background, and had to interview how many people? Six candidates, and was selected for the post 11 years ago. 11 years ago. So.
And if I could just add, we didn't get a chance because because we were a triad, but Bruce really has dedicated his life to kind of the political world and serving the community. He's been mayor. He's been involved both as a elected official, but also been very closely supporting folks either with campaigns or data or just being kind of he's a political player and has been really important person in shaping the political world of Santa Cruz. So great to have him on the board.
Yeah, one more thing that was all too is that I find that supporting other people's leadership is actually a role that I really enjoy. I've been in plenty of positions of leadership and trust, but to help someone else, especially when they're young and getting started, that just is my special place right now. I really love that. So part of who I think I am.
Now I'll jump in and I'll have a couple of comments. Gus Ferris is the most popular elected official in Santa Cruz County because he at least acts like a politician. And Bruce's focus on mentoring is certainly something I felt as fortunate. I think I'm maybe 1 year younger than you. So I'm younger than you, you've been mentoring me. But to go to my colleague, Abel, and what you brought, you were actually the first board member I met with, and you said something to launch our lunch together about, it's all about the kids. And that's the driving force of why we're all here, why you're here. And that also goes right back to your story of getting onto this board. And he had the toughest path to the board of any of us. And that he actually, his first time trying to get on the board was in a hotly contested election with him and one other candidate, 74 years old, and he was 24, kind of representing a generational difference, really jumping in the race to make sure Watsonville had a strong voice, because they're often neglected in countywide discussions, and that was part of your interest in the county office of ed, being a recent product of Watsonville schools, being closer to the systems than any of the rest of the board, you thought was a real strength and passion for why you came on. And that's carried through his, now I think you're the most senior member of the board. I think you maybe got on the board just before you, Bruce.
I'm crazy about that, but pretty much the same period, yeah.
Anyway.
I don't like that word.
Sometimes you just gotta embrace it.
Hey, just roll
Sometimes
with
you
it.
just gotta embrace it.
I don't like
It's
being,
on its way, you can do nothing about it, just roll with it.
I don't like being senior or retired of being seasoned. So,
Do appreciate the discount.
So the most seasoned, one of the most seasoned board members, if not the most. And then when you most recently ran for reelection, it was recognizing that you brought a continuity and a knowledge and an understanding of the complexities of the role, but still the residual commitment to the kids, which is why you're, and so that's great. For career-wise, we didn't explore that much except continuing in food safety as your passion and interest. A little bit of link to in your new marriage, your wife's and your commitment to a health focus. And maybe that's linked to plans in the next year or two or longer of starting your own family and seeing the education system from the parental side at some point. So having that longevity and health focus is certainly appropriate for that. And I know that's something I wished I had focused on at 40 instead of at 70. Let's see. Newly married. Great mentoring. The first lunch we had was just so powerful for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So Greg's somebody that I really admire and that I appreciate. I think he has a really good heart. He has a really good balance between work and life. I can tell that his family is very important to him. Has 2 children. Was very involved with their education as they were growing up in the school system. They're older now. They are no longer in public education system, but he still wants to.
Public.
Okay, but he still wants to be involved. He still wants to help out the community. He still wants to help out the students because he sees the value of public education for everybody, something that is accessible, and that's one of the reasons why he is on the board, because he wants to be able to contribute that aspect of it. He's had background and experience with serving cities, and so that knowledge base or that experience is kind of works, parallel with a system of it. Again, I really admire him because he has goals that he sets and he is dedicated to them. He meets them, and I'm very fortunate and that he's on the board and that we get to work together.
It's a pretty cool show. You like each other, you're giving away awards.
I gotta say, Mike, if I could just
Sure,
interrupt
sure.
this, seeing, and I talked to my colleagues at all the 58 counties or 7, I feel like this board is not the best, one of the best boards in terms of engagement and commitment and, service above self. I think the student trustees have been absolutely amazing, and have really brought another level of kind of on the ground thinking and kind of real focus. And I just want to say how grateful I am. I feel like I'm the luckiest county superintendent anywhere because I get to work with these folks, and I'm just grateful for both the seasoned energy and the new energy, and because I just think we have a great balance and a great working governance relationship.
Well, and truthfully, we could end it right there, because if you haven't, and we'll get to the surveys in a second here, that's not critical, but that is reflected in what you just said when you look at the results. And it's like going to the doctor. You see the results, it's always like, oh, great, what's gonna tell me? And as we were joking earlier, that I have good news for you and some bad news. Bad news is we're here. And the good news is, yeah, you guys are fine, right? So it's kind of that good news thing. And but for me, the goal is simple. Someone told me a couple months ago, and I've never had a chance to watch Ted Lasso. I'm just, it's okay. Oh,
Me neither.
Person I've never, but so it's this interesting thing. But he said that, and I hear all the lines from it, and that one of them is, it's better to be curious than judgmental. And so that's all today is. Curiosity. I'm not here in judgment. That's why I always say it's your conversation with each other. I just hang out and I get to make some notes every now and then. And I promise I'll watch Ted Lasso at some point. But I was also reading an article and I'm noticing a theme when you guys were just introducing each other. Raise your hand if you've ever donated blood. Why am I not surprised? Raise your hand if you regularly give money to when they're ringing the bell. And do you ever drop money in there? Okay. If you so when you I don't know about your supermarkets, but where I live, each store has when you're going to ring out your groceries, press those buttons. There's always at the end of it. Would you like to donate some money to feed the hungry? Anyone besides me? Okay, good. So I was reading an article that said you are the kind of people who are most likely to donate a kidney.
Oh.
Because you're altruistic. And I have some experience with that. My wife has a kidney transplant from her sister. And she's just, it's that whole notion of that kind of a person through and through. And both her and the sister, they're just, that's how they love each other. And they just love the world like that. But this is why I like having those conversations. Because one of the things that disappears immediately when people start talking at a deeper level than the work itself is people start to figure out, yeah, I kind of like you. I thought some interesting things about you before, but no, I was wrong. But they don't say it out loud, I was wrong. They just say, oh my God, I really like. And the admiration society starts up. I've had some conversations with our board. We were doing one of our retreats, and I always wear a collar. And I always put on a shirt and a tie for our meetings. And I wander in. And there's been a lot of joking about that. They never really understood why. And then when they were sitting, we're just having a conversation, and it's kind of like what we were just doing. And I basically explained there's a huge difference in how I get treated when I go out in public, when I have a collar and I don't have a collar. And it's immediate. And my wife noticed it one time, and she was outraged and said, "Relax. It's just life." And especially because again, she's ready to fight. But it's just the notion of, and I'll give you one brief example of it, because it's kind of curiosity. So I used to work at Montgomery Ward. It's like Amazon before it was billions of years ago, and people had to look at magazine story. And so I was working there, and where was I going with that? Montgomery Ward part of it. So many years ago, Montgomery Ward, and one of the interesting things about it was I was always in a suit and tie there because I sold appliances. And then we had the little alleyway, and just right across the street was Woolworth. More ancient than Montgomery Ward. That's all you need to know. They don't even exist anymore. And I would go over there regularly to get my lunch. And they always saw me in the suit and the tie. And then one day we move into a new neighborhood, and our next door neighbor is putting in a pool. And so he's dragging out the lawn, he's cutting up the strips. And he knows our backyard is terrible. We're in the backyard doing stuff. And he looks over the fence. "You want my grass? You just saved me about $400. Yes, knock the fence down." So we go over the fence, and we're just passing stuff through. And now I'm in my old camouflage pants, an old T-shirt, and a floppy hat or whatever. And the kids are probably 4 and 6 at the time, and they're kind of like they're dirt and carrying everything. And my wife decides she wants flowers. I'm like, okay, let's go to Woolworth. They've got the flower garden seed section. You can get whatever you need. And I'm thinking, yeah, good, I can sit down. Oh, dear God. And so I sit down, and my kids are in the sporting goods section. And I hear code 500 to sporting goods. Montgomery Ward, code 500 means we have someone stealing. And so my wife, she also worked in Montgomery Ward in the back office. And so she comes over, and she says, "Did you hear that, code 500? I said, "Yep." And she said, "What?" And she's looking around, and there's only 2 kids playing in the sporting goods section. They're both my kids. And he said, "Yeah, so you just relax," because she was outraged. And she's since then noticed that with the collars on, it's a very different world. Without the collar, if it's just a T-shirt, very different world. And so it's, for me, we were having that conversation, and the board member looked at me and just went, "Oh, I get it. It's not about," he thought it was about fashion or something. Like, no, it's a different level of respect. And they said it's a good reminder for me to be respectful of this role as well. And so suddenly, as we're having some of these other conversations, a lot shifted for he and I. And we were never antagonistic towards each other, but our level of respect for each other climbed quite a bit. And some of it was just, he was checking in on some of his, what I call MSU, where if we don't have an answer, we make stuff up. And every single person in this room is guilty of that. If we don't have an answer, the brain is hardwired to automatically make up an answer. And most times, the answer is not even close, but we run with it. And so the admiration that you're sharing with each other, that's a huge part of this conversation around how do you develop trust? How do you develop a cohesive team? And a lot of that is just having that random conversation, which again, this goes back to the notion of team building. Team building is just having the conversation about how do we want to be with each other while we are with each other. It's kind of therapeutic, it's a lot of things, but it's really just a conversation about how are we going to be. And so that's all this is today, is I just want to look at this and give you that space to keep having those deeper conversations with each other. It's a pretty safe room, and as safe as you make it, and I'll walk you through some of those things as well. I love a quote by Susan Scott. She says that she has a book she just wrote. It's called Fierce Conversations. And I'm enjoying this book, but I'm kind of weird like that. So, but she talks about searching for gold, and it rarely happens on the surface. It usually requires a lot of digging. And so when I've met with groups in the past, lots of times folks want to get together, and I've seen lots of forms of evaluations. But what's interesting is when they get the answers right, or when it looks good, people stop digging. Like, hey, everything looks fantastic. Let's get out of here. And I always say, whoa, hang on a second. How about we make sure that that happens with intention from now on? Because not right or wrong, good or bad, it could have been just accidental. But I really want you to be able to have a conversation so that you know for sure you're aligned and why you're having the success you're having. I have some models from when we did our Good Beginnings conversation last year. So if I need to share those with you, I will. Other than that, I want to keep you out of your intellectual heads and just keep you in that emotional part, that space where you're at, and just observing and identifying some things. So I don't want you to become too research driven. So we'll look at the slides if we need to. Otherwise, I love it when people just engage in a really good conversation. So I have a belief that all conflict exists in the absence of a good conversation. So let's just make it a good conversation. So please take a look at, again, this is all about curiosity. So what I'd love for you to do is go ahead and open up the results and kind of go, whoa, that's us. And go ahead and brag some and enjoy. But as you look at that, just kind of talk out loud. What comes to mind? What's your reaction? What stands out for you? Don't wait for me to be formal with it. We'll get formal in a minute. For right now, just what are you noticing?
I think in general, looking at it, just seeing all the green, it's, you know, I think I look at it with a sense of pride, and we can easily say, oh, we're good, let's go. But I think it's also, can be looked at as a foundation to build on, not because it's just us, but we're also building sort of how we want to work together for the people that come in after us, kind of setting the precedence of how the County Office of Education, the Board of Education operates, how we treat each other, how we interact with one another, and use that and setting sort of what that infrastructure and foundation looks like for people that come after us. Like you know, but yeah, that's kind of how my immediate thought was in looking at the results, just kind of seeing all the green.
I have a kind of related thought, which is pleasing to see that we all pretty much feel good about how things are going and how we're going to be doing. But to me, there's a danger of complacency, which you sort of alluded to, and that this is a sign of, among other things, not the only sign, but it's a sign of maybe we need to challenge ourselves a little more. Not sure in what exactly, but feeling that you're doing a good job can sometimes be the quickest way to stumble and move and forget something important. So I just want to, that's the way I operate. I got to watch out when I'm doing good about how I'm doing. But the other thing I guess that comes across to me is trying to decipher how many little green bars there are, that we do in fact have a lot of respect for each other, and that's really important. I have a hard time working with people that I don't have respect for, and or that I feel are that I can't be honest with, or that I can't trust to be honest with, or to work with, and know that they're coming from a direct, honest place. I have a big political problem right now dealing with somebody who has that issue, and it's wasting a lot of my time, but I have to do it. So to me, this is a kind of what Rachel was saying. It's a really good basis for not only feeling our work can happen well together, but that we're reinforcing the culture here. It is really important. I think, I believe, reflects actually what our county wants us to be doing here too, because that's the other side of it. We are representing, and we want to do a good job in that regard too. That is, make sure voices are heard, conditions are faced, hard things are dealt with, stuff like that for our county.
And I think looking at it a little closer, you know, there's these categories almost always, often, less often, rarely, and not sure. And I think that any category that has even one individual says that they're not sure or it's rare, those are things that we should work on, because that would mean that we're all on the same page. And there's maybe some individuals in our board that feel differently than the rest of us, and there's got to be a reason why. So I think those are areas that we could look more deeply into. You know, we are all individuals. We all have different living experiences. So we're not going to always see things the same way, but certainly we can work towards like a more continuity in how we think and how we feel about the board in those areas.
Both comments. First, Rachel's, I did notice, it seemed like there was at least one of us who rated at least every item differently, so my eye was drawn to those where two of us or more rated something a little differently, just maybe as a focal point for strength. But then, you know, Bruce's fear about complacency, part of what I love about this that I think helps us team so well is our values alignment, be it political or community focused or student focused values alignment that seems to permeate all of our work as a county office of ed and how the board operates. It makes it easiest for us to team. And the rare times differences have come up, they've been easy to resolve because I think there is that alignment, and maybe there's been more process or information differences. Which I would hate to give up, particularly in this day and age where I think the crises are beyond us that we're having to be part of a collective response to on behalf of our community. So taking a longer term perspective, I do believe there's even greater strength that comes in a group when there can be respectful, stronger divergence of opinion. But I don't think our current board has, and I don't think we necessarily want that right now because of bigger issues we're facing, but as a longer term issue. And I hate to say it, while I think we all reflect a particular philosophy towards the role of the County Office of Ed and Education in this day and age, there's probably 15 or 20% of the total county population that may not agree with us. And is their only voice 2 minutes at the mic? Is that what our goal is? No. Now, we may get to a discussion about getting greater participation from all board members, and maybe other voices would be represented with that greater participation. I don't know because I've never experienced it yet. But still, those are the two things. I think, following on Rachel's comment, there are some of these where I say starting with two or more of us diverged because there's one divergence on almost every item. And then there's complacency of just patting ourselves on the back, moving ahead. And there's complacency thinking that we are the sole voice that's we represent. Because we're all aligned in a lot of ways. So those are my two comments.
I wanted to add something about both of those comments that I read someplace recently, that we are not in disagreement with each other, we're in contempt in a lot of the conversations that we're struggling with across the nation. It has nothing to do with disagreement. It is just absolute contempt. We dehumanize somebody. And now it's really easy to have that argument where we just feel all those emotions. We're like, I don't know why I hate you, but I hate you. And now we have the conversation. So let's go fix our problems. That's a great way to get a relationship started, right? And so I think you're right, as you have to figure out how do you maintain this relationship. Again, that's why working on how we are going to be with each other, right? Because you don't have any of those challenges with the group in here, right? Because of the relationship. And I think that's where so many people miss, is like, it is the relationship. And just, we don't understand it sometimes because we want to dive in, well, we've got to do our goals. We've got to end. No, I love the fact that you guys are slowing down and having this conversation. So good. Someone else, what are your other thoughts as you look at that?
If I could add, when I see the unsure column, it makes me think that it could be that I don't see it because it's not happening, or I don't see it because I don't see it. And I don't know if it's happening or not. And so it feels to me that one of the things that we can do better is to communicate, make more transparent what these things are so that people can say, well, okay, we do it this way. I don't think it's not, or it's not, or, so I think that's part of it is making sure that everybody is able to see that. And I really like rubrics with categories because it helps us organize how we think, and it goes, oh, that's, that part of what we do can be fit here. And so it isolates things in a way that allows us to talk about it, think about it, do something about it. And so one of the things I see here is we can do a better job as a board to communicate these things so that everybody hears about how things are done or not. And then that allows us not to be not sure, but then to say, that's not, don't do it well enough, or we do great.
I can piggyback, and not to take away anything you just said, Ferris, because I agree with everything. However, I hit not sure a couple times because I haven't experienced it yet. So I'm new. And so I didn't want to make the assumption that, yes, of course the OU does that properly, but I like the LCAP isn't the timeline yet. So I hit not sure, not to say that we can't dig
Much
into
more I
it.
don't know as opposed to I don't think so.
Exactly.
Right.
I have a question for you guys. I know like during board meetings, there's usually you're supposed to be in a more professional talking role. Is this the time when we have to be in a more professional talking role? Or can I talk in like a more not so professional way? Yes.
Here
during
is
this meeting.
open,
Okay, cool.
I think.
It is a public meeting still.
It is a public.
Yeah,
Video.
not
Public meeting.
like that, not like crazy.
I know. I just wanted to
But-
remember, it's still a public meeting, but yes.
Still a question about procedural. Like, you have to, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion. Like, I think this is conversation. This is a place for you to be able to share those thoughts and working through, because there's no action items today.
Because I have a concern, and when I asked Ferris about it one time, it's like, I don't want to talk about other. And so I have, yes. So would now be the time to talk about that?
Whenever you feel like it's relevant to that conversation, yeah, the agreement that we just have to make is, how do we handle that conversation? And I think with this group, it looks like a pretty safe group that we could do that with. Did you want to talk about it now, or is there someplace else that you believe it may come up at? I trust you.
I don't know.
Well, go for it.
I know.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry. Let's silence this.
Oh, and by the way, we will take a break at 10:31 because at 10:35, I have been doing a lot of travel, but I didn't do quite as much last year, and so I'm no longer A-list. So I have to.
Got it.
I might be flying tomorrow in 24 hours is what I'm saying. So we'll be taking a break to 10:35. Punch the stupid button 30 times. So other than that, it's all yours.
I guess I'm just having concerns about one of our board members at Acosta, and I feel like is sort of neglecting his duties on the board, just because I feel like it's only been to maybe one meeting I've ever been at, and then he doesn't really participate. I just wish that I'm not exactly sure where the county he's representing, but I
totally
share the
agree.
same
We need to
concern.
have that discussion as a group, knowing it's a permanently recorded video, but it's a great thing to discuss. And it's a few times he does come, he doesn't participate, as you said, except for the swearing. He did agree to a committee assignment. I don't know if he's participated yet. And I'll just say, for all of the board members except the students, I want to follow up on Stacy's idea of meeting the student trustees one-on-one. All of you responded to those requests. I've reached out a dozen times through intermediaries as well to have a chat, as I wanted to get to know his story like we did today. No would have been better than no response.
This is, to me, politically tricky because it ran against an incumbent board member who was very popular and had been on the board for a long time and had become complacent. It just kind of didn't really campaign hard to get reelected for what's been, I think, maybe the fourth time. And Ed is tied in with the political network in the Pajaro Valley that got behind him, and his wife was on the PVUSD school board.
Was, yeah.
There's just some contention over there.
Recall.
Pardon me?
His wife was recalled.
Not recall, and
She's no longer.
There was a recall attempt. Yeah, no, she's not there anymore. But that's it. But he did get elected, and so he's totally legitimate in that role. And the rules are you don't really have to do very much once you get elected to this position. If you want your insurance and your stipend, you got to show up at a certain number of meetings per year. But there aren't a whole lot of other actual sort of legal requirements on us. And so he's doing it. And it's been really troubling for me, partly because the previous person was an active contributor to our work and very well connected, so could draw in other resources when needed and so on. But it's just a vacuum to me in terms of representation and in terms of another voice and another intelligence. What I know about his political background is some of the people that back him have quite different political views from, I think, most of us. And yet he has never disagreed with our board. He had never voted against the board. Once or twice we've had a minority vote, and he's been in a majority or a minority, not necessarily with any kind of a political or ideological difference with the other members. I'm stumped. I mean, we could all have an intervention and talk to Ed, why don't you show up more? But he's within his rights to not have to do anything, in effect. And it's a big hole in our system, in my view. But I'm stumped about what to do. Because, and again, he always has a reason, it's his work, which you have to respect in many ways. If your job requires you to do something to keep your job, that's real. So anyway, I don't know what to do about this. And I don't want to. A year ago, he was actually kind of taking the victim role, that we are not treating him well, we're not respecting him. That was what he said last year, because a lot of us had kind of written him off. And so that was not a good dynamic, and I don't want to continue that, but I don't know what to do now. So that's where I'm at right now.
So, and have this conversation, but caution that I don't want you to dive in on solutions just yet.
Good point.
Just airing, this is a great conversation. You're talking through what's the aha moment, but don't go to solutions yet.
Yeah.
Carry on with your conversation.
Also wanted to thank Ash because he
Brought it up.
brought it up with the name, and I was oblique in my reference to maybe Ed would represent a slightly different political perspective on the board, but I didn't want to be presumptuous because I don't know. But he's the one I was referencing when I mentioned him, thinking, and that would be great to have.
I was just gonna say that we should be reminded that it is an elected position. And if the community in which his district represents feels that maybe they are not being represented, that another individual can, next round, run for that role so that they might be more present and more well represent them. In the meantime, we keep
doing the work we're doing, and it seems like we all show up for South County no matter what in the events. And so, you know, I think at least jointly, we won't let our students, you know, be forgotten, but appreciate you definitely, you know, bringing your concerns, because you are a student, and that's the reason why we have student trustees, is so that we can have your perspective. You know, I don't want to go to solutions like Mike said, but there are some thoughts that I have that will help us all become more, hopefully more involved in our individual districts individually and together, and hopefully that will, you know, be inclusive, you know, and encourage everybody to individually get involved in their own districts as well as others, you know, whether they currently are or not.
I did want to add something just from a procedural process, which is something we looked into. So the bylaws of the board say that if you miss 3 meetings in a row, then that could be deemed as kind of an impediment to the position. However, because it's an elected position, it would require an intervention from the Attorney General at the state level to remove somebody from office. And our understanding is that that rarely ever happens unless there's criminal or, you know, other kinds of situations, or like a conflict of interest that's so serious that it can't be resolved otherwise. And so even though the bylaws say that, the procedure is our understanding also from the district attorney is that they almost never intervene unless the local jurisdiction files a lawsuit in court. And so the bar is very high, for an intervention to take place. And so continuing to attempt to support, I won't go to solutions.
The way that I look at it is like our boss is the constituent community. So unless they're upset, you know, unless they're not happy, then I don't think it's going to potentially change. Because there was re-elections and nobody ran the position. So that's how we're chosen, is by the community. If it doesn't say otherwise, then
Are we asking them? Because I feel like asking them versus not hearing from them is different. You gotta ask them like, hey, are you satisfied with your educational representative on the county board? Or the kind of like that, instead of just waiting for it to brought up, because I think it is very difficult for people to bring it up.
I think specifically in that region, in that area, because that trustee does represent PBUSD, I think a lot of focus and energy is on PBUSD as opposed to COE. So people who do want to step up, people who do want to be engaged in public education, focus on that board as opposed to the COE.
I think where Ash brings up a great point, though, is we've had PVUSD speak to the board, student and adult speakers twice in the last 6 months. And the fair question is, it was here, where are our other representatives, you know, on the board? That's a fair question. Now, I'm not sure if we as board members ask that. I think you're right, Ash. It's the public that should be asking that.
When you first said that, I thought you meant, did we ask Ed what was up with him as opposed to ask his voters? And we actually, a couple times in the past, did press him a little bit. When Rose Jetty was the chair, the president, she got on his case a few times. And just, I mean, literally, she, pretty forceful at times, said, why aren't you showing up? And, you know, why don't you do your committee work? And why are you even here? You know, she was pretty severe with him a couple times. But he just said, I'm here and the people elected me and I've got my job to do, you know. So trying to challenge him directly didn't seem to get us anywhere either.
What is his job?
I actually don't know.
He works in
Yeah, he works in ag.
And I think that Ash, as you mentioned it, from my perspective, the question that you're asking, you know, what does the community think is something that would be appropriate for the community. I think it would be not appropriate in our lane as board to gonna do that. But the question that you're saying is, what does the community think of their representative? I think that's something that, ties into the community deciding somebody else should run, the community voting for somebody else. And I would caution us about kind of getting too involved in, in the election process, because that really would be outside of our lane.
And I think as board members, we legally can't get involved in politics as a board. Like the individually.
That's not necessarily election is what I was talking about. I just know that there's a lot of discontentment in the PVSD school district right now. And I think that a representation for that would be very helpful for PVSD school district, just because there is so much conflict over there right now.
If I lived in that district, I would be calling my friends saying, hey, we got to get a different representative and start working on it and pull together people and resources and, to put in a strategy. This is really, when it's an elected position, it's politics. It's how many people you got supporting you versus how many does the other person have. And
Scheduling conflict with his work. If he says it's work, is it a scheduling conflict?
We used to meet earlier in the day. We pushed it back to 5:30. I think one of those reasons was to make it more accessible. And I do remember
He
him
asked for the
saying
time
that
change.
that would help him attend.
didn't change anything.
And with your job change, and I've had to do it once for work.
It's
The
hard.
Zoom ability,
If you
helps
have
a
to
lot.
work, it is challenging. But it's something that I committed to. So it's like, I'm gonna take time. I'm gonna make the effort. He's taking TO every once in a while. I need to take time off from that's what I do. Personally, what I signed up for.
and the Zooming is great. I mean, that's part of the work on sharing from a city side, because city councils I've seen struggle with this a lot. As almost every council is more politically divided these days than our board is. City councils have no ability to take any enforcement action against a fellow council member for the things Rachel and Ferris and Bruce all talked about. They're elected by the people, and those are their bosses, as you said, However, what city councils have done is taken censure votes, and that kind of has to reach a tipping point. And they have no force in law. It's just a statement of the rest of you. The other thing city councils have done is strip of vice president, vice mayor, committee assignments, things like that for a member. Now,
We
when
might
it's
be
for,
going into like solutions though, or
Listen,
I want to make sure that we can bring back around.
I heard we were kind of drifting that.
Well, any other ahas? I get one of the things, and I've written it down, one of the things you want to work on is around protocol, around accountability. And how do we do that? And you're right, you're incredibly limited to what you can do. And so that was part of the reason why I was saying, you probably don't want to waste too much time on solutions just yet. Because you got like one or two things, you've already identified them, especially the censure part. I was already thinking about that one. I've been frustrated with board members before as well. And I carry a reminder of one of my frustrations. Goodness, I think it's probably a good time because Ash, I'm kind of like you. I take the job pretty serious, and that was also one of the things that came out in our conversation. That why am I always so grumpy? I'm not a grumpy person. It's fun, and they're always grumpy in our meetings. Here's why I'm grumpy in our meetings, and so I carry this, and I won't name names, but there's a board member who's no longer a board member with us who this is her gift. That there was another county office that has a little foldable flyer that's pocket size, and it gives a brief overview of what county boards do. Because we're probably one of the greatest mysteries along with the Bermuda Triangle. We have a county board? Oh my God, I didn't know. Nobody knows, all right? And so it was a clever little fork that folded out. I thought, oh, it's nice. And so when our board took a look at it, we decided we should have a little clever little fold out too. We were thinking this little, hey, look, it's about the size of a business card. This is what it became. And that required 4 different meetings, 4 different board meetings. Our staff's time, as we had to go back, we had one board member who, and by the way, we were in the middle of our redistricting, our California voters' rights redistrict for trustee areas. And so the trustee map that you see is, we were in the middle of doing that while we were also working on that. That trustee map we already knew was not going to exist. It was going to change. But we had to go to 4 different, we had 4 different meetings, conversations about who are the different people we should go take that to. Did we get a bid from all the other, it was just this nonstop. And finally, I lost it, politely. And I said, Lord, is this going to increase graduation by 1 student? And and again, I got the look of being grumpy. And I understood why.
It's fun.
And I had on the suit and the tie, so I was a well-dressed grumpy. And I just couldn't understand it. And so we went through all that, 4 meetings, and it was irrelevant within the first when we finally got them. And we each received 18 of them. And I just 17, I have no clue where they are. I keep that one as a reminder that all the conversations, all the work we do, kind of going back to where you're headed, that we volunteered for this, and we said we were going to focus and we're going to show up, and because we're going to do what's right for kids. And then I have 0 control over the other board member who decided to take us down that path and was not very happy about a lot of things that ended up happening with redistricting, all kinds of things. It was just, I don't know what to tell you. But if you're not focused on the students, then, and so yeah, we did that. No one has graduated because of it. I'll just say that. I don't know that we've increased attendance either because of it.
When I think about what you just said, it reminds me just in the corporate world, anytime you want to do something, you kind of keep going back to your mission. Is this going to, is this in the way of our mission? Is it going to give us the results of the goals that we've already set? And if it's not, then it's something that's kind of a nice to have and you kind of set it aside. But I think if, as we set our goals and we just say, is this fulfilling a specific strategic plan and does it meet our mission? And I feel like that's kind of one of those things, did it result in more students graduating? No, maybe education is great though. Educating our community about what we do is really important, but ultimately graduation, students showing up to class.
I think sometimes it's almost too low of a bar, right? Like, well, is this conversation going to increase attendance? Oh, then it's going to increase graduation? Let's talk about it, right? But those are the ones that's tough sometimes just to find that focus. Oh, thank you very much. Make sure I hang on to that forever. So, you did a perfect segue. It's like like you're reading my notes. Stop that. So what we'll do is we'll take the break because I gotta go ahead and start pushing the button. And how long would you like to take for a break? When you get
to the A group. You converse about the A group.
As soon as I can check in, okay, we can meet again. So let's take a little break and then we'll get started again. And we are going to jump towards, I can't tell you now because we're running the whole thing. It may or may not have something to do with the mission. So we'll come back to this conversation some more. Break time while I try to check in. that board unity, conditions that we're already having a conversation about. I love this thing here where it says the board is committed to a common vision. That's the one that's lighting up the most. So what I'd love for you to do on your blank sheet of paper, don't let your neighbor see it, hide it, just like you did in second grade. 2 sentences or less, what is the mission? Don't say it out loud. Just 2
The
sentences.
mission for,
It says the board is committed to a common vision. I'd love to know what your common vision is, 2 sentences or less. Don't let anyone else see you as you write.
So the board not to see you.
It's the board. Or whatever that common vision, I shouldn't have even answered that part. I should have just said yes. Whenever you're done, just set the pen down and we'll know who's left still writing a thesis. So you must be citing your sources. You're still writing. This isn't right or wrong, good or bad. It's just kind of curious. What is the vision as you said? One person still writing. One person.
sort of.
All right. So again, not to me, but to each other, I'd love for whoever wants to go first, go first. And just, again, you're reading it to each other. I want you to start to notice if they're in a line completely or what? That's not, whose mission is that? So,
Board's common vision is to support county educational systems, providing education in the broadest and most community-centered sense for county.
There's some similarities. First, I go to our tagline. It's about the students. But then the real line is supporting excellent services and programs in support of public education and equity for all learners in Santa Cruz County.
Well, it's not a clean version, but I will add, I really like what you had to say, but I would also add that it is our mission vision to, as a board, to ensure fiscal stability so that we can provide an environment, a learning environment, an environment of individual learning so that every student finds their own success.
Realizing mine is not really mission, vision language, more of like task or responsibility. So
Don't judge it.
it really needs to go to the next level up. But I put provide educational support and services to students across the county in CWE programs, provide support and guidance to 10 school districts in Santa Cruz County, and serve as arbiter and transfer appeals. There's more, yeah.
Like it.
Mine's similar, a little bit simpler. It's just to advocate and provide for an equitable education for all students.
I took this too literal. I was like, "Ugh, I can only do 2 sentences. So it's pretty simple and not my full idea of what our sport is, but the common vision of the board is to help students succeed and make lasting positive change within our community and county education.
I didn't hear the last phrase.
The common vision of the board is to help students succeed and make lasting positive change within our community and our county of education.
I think everything that was said, I think I got, the only thing I added was to ensure that systems and policies represent our values and best interests of students.
So, vision is typically connected to maybe some vision, what you're saying. Vision is what it is you're trying to change in the world. Okay? And your mission is how you're going to do it. So what do you hear about how, when you listen to each other, what do you hear about how you're expected to do it? Because this may go back a little bit into the conversation you were just having about accountability, but it's also making sure that there's some clarity around what everybody thinks of in that term of mission. So what are you guys hearing from each other?
Ensure, one of the ones I said was ensure fiscal responsibility, stability, because without our fiscal responsibility, we can't do a lot of the work that we want to do. So that was just a piece of what I said. That was the how-to.
Totally agree. And I think it links to a duty we have. I viewed it as encompassed in providing or supporting excellent services, because you can't have excellent services over time without it. But given it is a specific duty, it may be pulling out separately. And then is that really a role of the board? And it's the superintendent's oversight of school district's fiscal capacity isn't in the board purview to, except to the extent you share that with us.
We accept or reject. That's not what it is. Sounding right.
It's an accountability layer.
Yeah.
But it's not the actual decision.
Mhm.
I added the word communities, the phrase community supportive sense of education, because first of all, I realized that when I first wrote it, it was our young people, and then I realized, well, wait a minute, actually, we're kind of pushing that one, with the CAC and so on. And then also the other thing that we're doing, I think, and I don't really have a clear perspective on what, how it is in other counties or states, but we are making the educational system a support system for the broad community. With our wellness centers, with our recognizing the school has roles that affect families and not just students getting A's or B's and getting into college or not. And to me, the school system as a support system for the whole community is emerging. It's one of the few things where, not that there's growth necessarily, but there is dedication and improvement. I don't know. It's what I see in terms of how is life in our community for regular folks. And the education system enhances a lot of people's lives in an important way. So to me, there's that role. It's sort of like it's another level beyond it's for the students. Well, we're all students in a sense of learning how to live together and make our community work. And our school system, our education systems are helping that, contributing to that. I don't know if that's too abstract in terms of the level of where we operate.
And I think sometimes it's just like a lot of the community, we don't all understand, or community doesn't all understand what districts do versus what county boards of education do. And likewise us, like what the county office of education does and what we as a board are responsible for. And I see if we're talking just the county board of education, I think it is one of our responsibilities to elevate the work that the COE does, making sure that the community understands and knows what it is. And I don't know how you would put that into words of a mission, but at this moment, but I think that that is a key part of it, because there isn't a whole lot that we have as a direct responsibility of County Board of Education, but I think that that's a pretty important one, that the community understands what we do and why we do it, and all of the programs that the COE offers, and to the community as a whole, county as a whole.
Beth, did you hear other commonalities?
Can we restate the question? Because I think I got confused at which definition we were supposed to be answering and what we're talking about right this second.
I love the quick fact that you asked, I would say ask this group, what are they working on right now? Because what I was saying was that what is the mission? And now I'm working on the next two questions, so I've already lost it.
Yeah. correct. And I think that was what the mission, what our
Yeah,
mission
what are the
is, what our
common themes
purpose,
you're hearing
yeah.
right now?
common-
Thank you.
Right, right.
Common theme.
Comes to the mission.
Write down our mission, is that what we're talking about? No.
I think it's,
What did you
if-
do?
based on what we heard from the vision, which is the destination, what did we hear about how we're gonna get to that vision from everybody's comments? I think that was a question.
By the way, I thought your mission that you wrote down, I gotta tell you, if I were judging, I would judge it as a winner. It was pretty clear, it was pretty concise, and I thought it was actually what most missions should be. So if you could read yours again, you might hear some more into it.
Want me to read all of it?
Yeah.
Okay. The common vision of the board is to help students succeed and make lasting positive change with our community and county education.
So that's why I was saying, I think there's so much around what you just made it really simple. To go along with what everybody else was saying. And so I think your mission's pretty clear. But the question was really about what else do you hear from everyone else that you hear the common themes? Like, oh, we are in alignment. Oh, we are. Oh, there's a reason why we got a big green light on our ocean.
Yes, I think
So whatever your aha is.
we all really have the students in mind and want to do what's best for them. And also, I think we do a good job at professional boundaries, especially led by Dr. Spock, because you're like, this is our role as a board. And we stay within our role, I think, very well for that. And then I also think we have many good programs that help support our students. And I think definitely the financial part and kind of being basically that.
One thing that I think is part of the, let's say, success of our work has been our adaptability. And I think it's almost like a meta goal, is that recognizing that we don't just have a specific destination of saying, we know we want to do more of this specifically, but that we've kind of been, we've been thoughtful. So we've come to you and we've said, we want to do a charter for adults, and you supported that, right? We come to you and said, we think we need to, if we were struggling through COVID, we needed to adapt in this way. And so I think that part of that how we're getting to it, it's almost like we know that the vision is changing, the world is changing, we've done a lot more with student leadership in the last few years because we recognized we needed that voice at the table. And so to me, that's one of the things that has been most exciting about the work is being nimble enough to be able to respond to all the changes and say, to think about this differently. To me, that adaptability is a really important part of our mission.
A word I didn't hear is commonly mentioned, and maybe it's because of the board meetings embedded in another one, like I kind of had finance under excellence. And that is equity, which seems to be such a calling card of our superintendent's leadership. But I hear the board over and over expressing support for 100% of those who participate. And yet I didn't hear equity called out as much in vision statements.
I think it comes out a lot in what, yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, I think you hear, it's sort of like an underlying message in all of what we're saying a little bit, in that the COE is really about providing equitable education for students and meeting them where they're at. And being nimble and being agile, and what the COE says, oh, well, we really need to have this. And we're like, yes, it meets this specific group where they're at. Let's, we can support that. So maybe not called out specifically equity, but I think it's kind of that underlining sort of values that we all have, that it's an importance when we're meeting, building new programs or meeting students where they're at.
And maybe I'm focused on this time and age or on this COE leadership. But as finance gets pulled out as an explicit duty, I wonder if equity needs to be pulled out as a specific part of our vision.
It's interesting thinking of the finance because some organizations, especially when they have complicated financing, like Office of Education and school districts, the financing becomes the point of rigidity for the organization. That's the grant we got to do this, this is what we have money for. We can't consider other things. It's just the budget and the constraints of the funding sources and so on become what shape the actual activity in the meeting. And I don't feel that we are, not that we're breaking contracts or, misusing money, but we are able to keep the equity mission in the front and say, okay, the business side is going to be in service to that. That's what we're about here. And I admire our business department for, I think, doing that, given how complicated and how much there will be some financial administrators who will just insist that we lock it down and do it the way they see it, because that's the only way this corporation or this organization is going to survive. That's a view that you can't say is not valid, but it sure makes for a different experience. And I think we have a business department that recognizes that an agile COE has got is better. That's my.
Because even if there is some financial restrictions and if they said we need this program, they're like, okay, so how do we make this work? Where do we get the money from? It's not a definite, no, we don't have a grant for that specifically, but how do we make that work? And I think that comes in. And I think that those particular programs that might come out is because they're trying to find programs that are equitable, that are meeting a specific group of students. I think the COE does a really great job, and I think that up until now, it sounds like that the County Board of Education has supported all of those endeavors because we see the mission, the vision the same, and that's meeting students where they're at.
I was financially skeptical of the CACs when Paris first began developing the idea, because I was worried about getting enough ADA. Because if you do like a break-even analysis, like a business would,
Sure.
it was a pretty high number to start with to make it work financially. But we exceeded that almost immediately. So the vision was correct, but it was still a little skepticism about, is this going to work?
And that is, I think that's the part of the County Board of Education is to ask those really difficult questions.
And if I could, I'm sorry, if I could just do a little history walk on that. If you remember, what we said is we're going to try it out. We wanted your support as a board for 2 years. And at that point, we might say this was not a successful endeavor. We didn't get enough students. We didn't get, and last check, we're generating a $400,000 surplus, which is
And we recertified that.
And we went.
Didn't we recertify the charter, right?
Yes.
And we recertified their charter
That's
because of
right.
it.
And we renewed the charter. That's right.
Information that came out of the mission vision writing was, well, I love the notion we're focused on the kids that presumes under the age of majority or whatever you call that, age of adulthood. And so students are learners, but then to say we're responsible for equitable access for all learners or students, well, we don't really have a role with Cabrillo or UCSC or all the people who educate elsewhere unless it's through collaboration and partnership. Do you have language that differentiates the population we directly serve that doesn't necessarily pull in Cabrillo and UCSC, given we don't have any official?
Are you saying so let's
Because
NFL?
of CAC, we're
Right,
no longer
right.
just worried about K through 12 or TK through 12.
Right.
Pre-K through 12.
Yeah, and
How do we deal with that?
yeah, well, I mean, you use the word learners, and that's actually the term we use in our current mission and vision. We use the term learners because that more expansive idea of anybody who's looking for opportunities. You might already have a, 2-year degree, but you're going to be joining our medical assisting program, or you maybe are learning, developing a literacy skills because they help with learning how to read and write. So this idea of being expansive and also to look for those opportunities to serve, I really appreciated the way that Ash framed it, because this idea of kind of thinking of it as a community and then saying, well, these folks have it covered in this area. Well, what are the areas that are not covered? Right? We just saw that there's 40,000 adults in Santa Cruz County that don't have a high school diploma. In my mind, that's an opportunity to serve, right? That's an opportunity to serve. And so we just got that recently from county. And so that's the kind of, those are the way I look at that, that our effort is that, it's great that we're graduating 250 students with a high school diploma every year, adults. But,
When you have that many.
we have more work to do, and
So outreach.
and that's how I look at that. And being able to, one of the things that I think you're going to appreciate this year that we're working on, which I think is going to help with this work, is we're going to be starting to share with you lots of infographics and kind of overarching data about in three areas: the need of our community, which would be like there's 40,000 people who don't have a high school diploma. There's imagine that infographic. The services, what are we doing about it? So the CAC is doing this. We're looking maybe at the possibility of adding the test that's not high school diploma, but you take the GED, and other tests as an additional opportunity for students, and then results. So need, services, results. How many people are we actually graduating in this specific? But you're going to see that in all our different areas, because I think that is going to help us be able to identify new opportunities to serve.
And then at some point, outreach to get information out to those 40,000 individuals that don't
Right.
have their high school diploma, and saying, look, you've got all of these avenues, and that can be a big undertaking. I think that could be a big role for the board to have in their individual areas and going out and speaking.
So one of the things during my superintendent's report, which I think will help you work with me on identifying those priorities, is to give you ongoing data that we'll be able to review on an ongoing basis, that will make it easier for you to also, we could do it on an annual basis. We could say, well, we haven't looked at have we made a dent in the 40,000? Yeah, we got 1,000 of them with degrees this year, So, well, let's do more, or whatever it is.
Ashley and I gotta throw something out because again, you guys feel like you're cheating on looking at my notes. I'm already on the conversation. So what were you gonna say? And then I'm gonna talk.
I don't know exactly what the rule is called, but I personally believe that all education should be free. And I really appreciate how we're giving education to adults, and I am wondering if having adults as student also gets us revenue, and if there was any way we could expand that, like especially because there is that need for people who do not have their high school, stuff like that.
So I think you're asking if our CAC program allows us to provide the program for free, right? And the answer is absolutely. But we do have certain parts of our programs that are not currently free, which is our medical assisting program and our dental assisting program. It's free for some people if they qualify for certain grants, but it is one that does require people to pay for, and we're trying to expand that. So I think I would agree, Ash, that we would love to make it so that all our programs are free for all students, but we're not quite there yet.
I think it's worth mentioning that the reason a lot of us are in the world of public education is that we strongly believe that that's a role for the public to take, for government, local communities, and so on. And I think it ought to be free up and down all the way through college. That so much increases our society's capabilities if everybody has a chance to be educated, and to hold people back on a cost thing when there's so much money being made in other aspects of our society is just an imbalance. And so I'm for everything free.
I think we're getting there. Like community college, I think is a lot more accessible.
It was a huge step. I remember when those began to come in on a large scale in California, and it was really harder for a lot of people to go from high school to college, to four-year college, before the rise of the California community college system.
Having just paid $500 for the next semester in community college and $45,000 for UC, college isn't free in California.
That's my
conversation. I hate to interrupt them. But the question that you were already starting to answer was, and I'm going to steal this one straight out of the handbook, if you haven't seen it. Governance handbooks, and I'll be autographing copies of it. I may have had something to do with it. But I aligned it a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to admit, you're guinea pigs. I mean, you're beta, the beta test. I sat down with chat and did some work on seeing if I could align the workbook with the board self-evaluation. And it claimed a few places. I'm like, yeah, I feel brilliant. So actually means that I paid attention in class twice. So the question I was going to ask you is on page 16, the first two questions. And our board, we wrestled with this at one of our recent board meetings. And I love the fact that we bogged down on these questions. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was literally an opportunity to create clarity for us that, oops, we don't have as much clarity as I thought. So if you would have checked with us, and I did mention it, I said, look, I think that if we had to write ours down, and that's, by the way, why I had you write yours down, because I thought if we had secretly written ours down before we asked the question, I guarantee you we would have come up with 7 different answers. And I think that's not bad. It's just important that if we're really aligned, let's have that conversation. So the question I wanted you to deal with, and you're starting to head down that path, what metrics or indicators do you regularly review that help you understand whether your COE is meeting its mission, or are you just feeling good about life, which is fine? Because I'm feeling good about life for BCOE. I will tell you openly, because I already said it on an open meeting, I think our staff has done an absolutely phenomenal job of leading us down the correct path. The board has never set that direction, which is that we're guilty of not having done our job. And we're the ones who're supposed to set the direction, and the staff head that way. And I've never complained or never said anything because, wow, everything's in alignment. The staff does have us doing the right work. We are looking the right way. I'm good. But I was also trying to figure out one bite at a time, and our board wasn't ready to understand the full meal. We just happy to understand that's silverware. Yeah, that's what you use. So what metrics or indicators do you regularly review that help you understand whether you're actually headed there intention? I think you guys are just starting to unveil some of that.
That's an interesting question from the standpoint of our official role. Is like we get a lot of metrics from the standpoint of the LCFF, all the reports that we get through the year, the interim budget reports and so on. In a set, I always look at those and I look for the column that has the didn't do it, or didn't qualify or something.
Yeah.
I always look for those and kind of count them up and see how we're doing. But our role in that is very pro forma. It's essentially, well, we could vote it down and send it back to Ferris to redo it, but have we ever, so it's primarily, we get those, we see those numbers or those check marks and so on. And so we get we have a sense of what's up. They're telling us that we're doing a little bit better in ELA this year, but math is still down. So that gives us a sense. I don't feel like we get metrics that would affect our decision-making at the board level. In other words, like, oh my gosh, that's okay. I move that we change this to this, either about the budget or about the programs. We don't get involved at that level, so that it's kind of pro forma is the best word I have for it. I think it's a role, but it's not a decision-making role. And by the way, that reminds me of when we talk about the meeting time. One of the arguments for moving the meetings later was so the public can come, so parents can come. They don't come, and the reason is we don't have decisions that people are in controversy about. I did time on a city council. Every meeting was packed. There were things that people cared about that we were going to decide one way or the other on. That is not part of our ongoing expedition here, really. And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just that's the role the state assigns us. So I kind of feel like I'm not sure about how I even know how we're doing here, except that we basically feel good about it. We have competent staff who are reporting to us, and seemingly the outside world is confirming what they're telling us. So so I don't have it's very vague and intuitive as opposed to numerical or kind of at that level.
I think that the reports that we get are informative, it's usually student success, or if there's, a charter renewal, especially the ones that we manage, we get a lot of information. But I think the staff is really good at, if we're not seeing something and we have a question, they're very responsive. So I think we've, at least in the time that I've been here, felt comfortable with the reporting that comes to us rather than us having to read, because it's so inclusive. But also if it's, if we feel like, oh, well, what about this? They'll either have the information right away or they're like, I can get that to you. So they're very responsive and it's helpful. I'm very much sort of like a dashboard kind of person. So I know that when the annual reports come in, like I'm all over it. Like I want to see what happened year over year, like side by side, because it really gives us that trend line of how we're doing. And even with the state ones that we get, the dashboards, I have to go flip back and forth like that to kind of see how we're doing. And that could be a little frustrating. That would be something that I'd love to see, just kind of those year over year. This is, what we're doing, especially with like CAC, which is a relatively new program. It's like, okay, this is how we're doing. And it's hard to get a trend for only a few years, but I think that that's one thing. If we had to look at it, maybe some of those kinds of trends would be nice, but our staff is so responsive that I think that we just kind of take their lead, their expertise lead.
Rachel's comment, and this is just all of the reports that come up, I think, be it budget or the state mandated reporting, give us a lot of that information. But linking it to what Rachel said, if there's been one common theme I've asked repeatedly of staff, it's, well, on this policy or this report, what's different than last year? And that's what I teed up, is what's different than last year. And that's been the most common theme, which I'm a metrics person, so that's kind of important to me. Budget, same thing. How is this year's budget going to be different than last year's in terms of ways that affect the world, not just cost of living increases? That changes the world for our staff, but it doesn't change the communities we serve and the equity we're trying to drive.
I'd like to compare, I guess, trends from other districts across the state. When you hear about declining enrollment, and then find out that our program isn't declining as much, or it's the same, what's even growing, that says a lot about what we offer. And services, programs that students actually want to attend. And that's one way of.
Stacey, you've taken up so much of the conversation.
Well, I haven't felt the need to jump in when people say the things I wrote down. And more so.
But now we'd love to have you share.
Well, actually, I had more on the previous one that I just didn't speak up, but
Go back to that as well, because and here's why I say that. One of the things that I think is important is the fact that you have a different lens, that you said you haven't experienced it yet.
Right.
And that's a wonderful perspective to bring into this conversation, where some of the seasoned folks have been hanging out for too long, and we know some stuff and we kind of forget a lot of things as well. So your fresh perspective is really important in this conversation.
I don't have anything to add to the metrics because you literally expanded upon every idea I had. But back to like the mission conversation, there was one piece that I would have added to, and it relates to Ferris's term of learners. And I feel like mission beyond the learners we directly serve is the learners in the community, like the teachers and the administrators and the community. To Bruce's point, like I'm thinking of all the professional development that's provided, all of the resolutions we provide that districts can then use, the community-based events like the mask you wear and other presentations and community-oriented outreach. So I think learners, think about it as a community level, like we support parent learners, teacher learners, community members who want to be involved or knowledgeable about the community or the education system. So I would just broaden that perspective a little bit.
Also, what I would say about the term learners, I was recently going through synonyms for students and stuff like that, because I was looking to make a new email like just for school stuff, because I keep getting so much spams on my regular account. But I came across the term scholar and I really like that word. So
What is it about that word that you like? What drew your attention to that?
I like the word because it makes me think of libraries and also it makes me think of someone researching and studying and like learning stuff, but also like knowing stuff to the point where you can teach it, which I've always heard is like if you can teach it, that means you know it very well. And I think a scholar sort of is a lifelong thing. And learners seems a bit kindergarten.
I gotta tell you, I'm writing that down, scholar. I was doing a training a couple weeks ago with folks from community colleges. We did a leadership week, and somewhere in that we were having a conversation, and someone said they changed the name. It was near the end of our time together. They said that they changed the way they see their clients and started calling them their neighbors. And they said the word had an amazing impact in their meetings, how when they started talking about how we solve a problem for them, look at people very differently when I'm talking about my neighbor than when I'm talking about my client. And because I had made some joke about my neighbors from the South, my neighbors from like the South is in Georgia. They're still my neighbors. They're just neighbors in a different state. And we were talking about that thing, how we visualize people. And so a lot of changes happen in a lot of places where folks are doing some amazing things. I don't know if I asked you guys this last year, but there is a school in California. It's a middle school that is ranked in the top 10 most innovative schools in the globe, the planet. So what I'd love for you to do, we're gonna do a little Jeopardy round quickly. And in your team of 3, your team of 2, your team of 2, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds. And what I'd like you to do is just come have a conversation and decide which part of California do you think this middle school that is in the top 10 most innovative schools in the planet, around the globe, which part of California do you think they come from? So you and your partner have 30 seconds, no cheating and using AI. Just have a quick conversation. Where do you think they come from? 30 seconds.
If inland San Diego. Like inland San Diego, like that. So I don't know why. I feel like I read something. So I'm just not sure.
I think not a huge district.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not LA or.
No. No.
Innovation, but what causes innovation is.
Okay.
So I was thinking like Imperial or something.
Yeah.
Would need and opportunity.
So where is a place?
Yeah, like that area, but
Yeah.
central.
In an educational context.
Visiting the.
All right.
Innovative about.
5 seconds.
Defines them as innovative.
Yeah.
Lock in your answers.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Answers are locked in, and we'll start to my left. So what part of the California would the 3 of you say?
We were thinking Southern California, not a big district, more like inland from San Diego area.
Okay.
We did not come with a conclusion. We had 2 different perspectives. Ash's was more of like more wealthier, and I was thinking innovation. You have to be innovative when you have less. So I was thinking more rural, a rural area. So from my perspective, I'm just gonna say Northern California, kind of rural, remote area.
Nice. Nice. And you're going with,
Not that great with geography.
we just had a wealthier.
Beverly Hills, yeah.
Wealthier as in think Netherlands kind of thing is where my mind went because whenever I see these like innovative things for like helping the environment and that kind of stuff, I think of like, oh, the Netherlands or those people are doing a lot to like advance things. So wealthy in that way, not like a rich city kid.
I like that.
We thought Silicon Valley would try to claim the mantle of being most innovative, but probably not. We ended up thinking need and opportunity. Where do those meet? The Central Valley.
Congratulations, you're all wrong. The school is Davis Middle School, Compton, California.
But that's not part of LA. Unified.
Correct. Compton is its own unified. And so Compton Unified School District, and the reason why I brought that up, scholar. That was one of the first things that Makai Ali, who was their board president forever, has been around. I love Makai. And Makai's unapologetic about the fact that if you're going to change the way our students see themselves, we have to change the way we see them. And he really started pushing hard on the notion of their scholars. And we're going to start treating them like that. And then they changed some other things. But that was part of it. So Asher kind of reminded me of that notion of however we see people is how we tend to treat them. And so and I've asked that question, by the way, for the last year and a half, in probably 15 different settings. One setting was about 600 people, and only one person in the room got it because I had actually mentioned Davis Middle School was the school, and the lady had gone to school there. So she went, I was probably Compton. She was just joking. And congratulations, you're the only one that's gotten it right so far today. She's like, well, what? And we were asking her about it. She's like, well, I went to school when I was a girl there, so I knew the name of the school. I just didn't think, oh my goodness. And she was like proud, but embarrassed because it's that the adults in the room have to also start changing the way we see things. Otherwise, how do we expect our students to see it differently? Right?
So I'm curious, what exactly was, how or why that school was designated as the most innovative?
I don't know a lot about the details around it, but there was a competition that they and there's a lot that was written up about it. I found out because I was reading something and there was a little blurb, and then I followed that link, and it led to another link, which led to the ABC News 7.
I was gonna say, I think I remember seeing a video on it. Now that you're talking about it, I think I did see some kind of like reporting on it and the programs that they had initiated.
And then Makai also, I sent him a message. Hey, nice job. Says, yeah, this is part of our conversation. And he kind of explained a few things about it.
I know Darren Brawley, he's on the FICMAT board with me, and so we've talked a little bit. So I'll have to, I'm gonna see him on Wednesday, so I'm gonna
Tell him
ask him about it.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
that's-
tell him that Mike Walsh says, tell me about Davis.
Because Compton is doing some stuff. I mean, they are really clear about if we want to, if our students can participate in this economy, then we need to have them prepared because everything's moving towards computer science, computer, whatever. And so they started sending more of their students to STEM programs. And so, yeah, you should talk to Darren about some of the things they're doing. And it is what I tell folks all the time. I'm going to tell them now I know 3 boards that are perfectly aligned. 2 of them are, one is Compton. That's a relationship. When you look at the work that the superintendent is doing and the relationship they have with the board, he's one of the superintendents who's been around for a number of years. And I want to say 10 or somewhere around that area. And yeah, and in terms of superintendency, if you're hitting double digits, you're doing something. Congratulations, right? And then another one is, just Lucerne Valley, or Lucerne, where they couldn't be more opposite of Compton, but they are a super small district down in the Imperial Valley area, the Happy Valley, Imperial. They routinely, there's a population where everybody has got declining enrollment. Theirs is continuously climbing. And they are in the desert, and they're in the middle of nothing, and they're climbing enrollment. And
The district?
Lucerne Valley. Yeah, it's Lucerne Valley or Lucerne, I just got to get it straight in my head. Peter Livingston is their superintendent. And when you hear their board talk, you might as well be hearing their superintendent. When you hear their superintendent, you're hearing their board. This is it's amazing alignment, and politically, they couldn't be more opposite. They're geographically, their demographics, everything about it. And they are both doing some amazing things. Right? And I would imagine that if they were to do the board self-evaluation, they will almost score as high as you guys scored. It wouldn't be quite, they'd have like a 1 red or something. They're not like you guys. So, how's that for kissing? How's that for kissing?
Oh,
Let me go on.
Stop.
But I think, so that's for me, is that a lot of people don't realize, but the reason why your conversation you're having right now is so important, because I'm about to get to the next one that I think is really the reason why we should be talking about this, but boards or governance has the second highest impact on student success. And so there's research now that's starting to come out that says that. And that it's most effective in the areas with the highest need. And so, but that part of the need is that alignment between how we see our work and how we can label our students, that's the scholar versus and that neighbor versus our client, all those things. And so where I thought you brought it up earlier, Rachel, you were talking a little bit about elevating the mission within the community, which as you're talking about the metrics that you look at, the second question on here on page 16, you thought was the perfect segue. As a trustee, how do you see your role in advancing the county office's mission to serve every student, no matter the zip code, background, or circumstance? So how do you elevate the mission of the county with the community?
I think being out in the community.
And these folks here talking.
Being out.
Yeah,
in the
y'all gotta do
community.
this.
We all have to be out in the community, and it's a conversation I think I had with the VP, our VP Larson and Superintendent Sabah, is I really want us as trustees to really get out in the community, not just to show up for the social events, but to really go out and educate our community about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and maybe the empty seats that we have in the gallery or online will start filling with people wanting to see, not just because there's a controversy, but because they want to see all the great things that are happening in our county across a wide student body. And so I really would love, one of the things I talked about is trying to get some kind of program together, whether it's a packet, not like the little Bible that you had.
Please, I got one. I know some people.
But I really want to talk, have the conversation with people in our community about who we are, what we do, our COE. But I think it's really just getting out in the community and being seen and letting them know we care, regardless of whether it's our district or not, and just kind of being out there and doing it.
I think that's
As you all know, I've been aggressively doing that my first year, and I've had to come up with my own script for what I do in one-on-ones or speaking to a group. And I loved when Rachel brought it up at the last agenda meeting, trying to get something so we all have the common bullet points about what the COE.
Same voice.
And 2 or 3 bullets, not, because that's all we'll have to talk to somebody one-on-one or to a group and to without losing them.
What if we adopted, maybe this is a very specific implementation idea, but so taking it more abstract or more general. What if every month a preview of the coming board agenda had some topic highlighted so that publicity about the board meeting goes out ahead of time saying the board is going to be looking at a report on such and such about our adult education program or whatever. And then also we are all handed the 3 bullet points about what that topic is so that when we're out at visiting other school boards or community events or so on, we've got our talking points ready for us for that month. And, some of our meetings, I don't know even what we'd highlight, because the nature of what comes to us at our meetings every month, but just something where actually we're on a publicity campaign about the education system of this county and how the county Office of Education and the county board are promoting it and highlighting it so that people know what is going on and know what the opportunities are for education.
That was the conversation I had with Nick after the last board meeting was, and maybe not starting from scratch, because I'm sure he's got lots of great information that he's already had together, and hopefully not reinventing the wheel, but definitely using our social media for highlighting those kinds of things, getting people excited, even if it's just say, hey, we're going to have a presentation on CAC or one of our student clubs, and make sure you tune in. And even if it's for that moment, it's okay. But there's so much. Ash.
I think that when we're talking about the community, so often we're thinking about adults, and I think it's also really important to find a way to get this to students, because I think pretty much no students know about the Board of Education, and a lot of times it's the adults we're catering to when we're thinking about letting people know about this stuff. And I don't personally know how we'd be able to get this out there to students, but I think it'd be important to get students to know about the board and let them know that they have a voice and that kind of stuff. And
Well, how would you do that? Where do students meet, like maybe school clubs? I mean, I think, well, first I would say, I don't know, we have some kind of like, line, we need to be careful that we're not going out and recruiting students for this, CBE programs, but I like your idea about how do we reach the students about our programs, right? Is that what you're saying?
I wasn't necessarily saying programs. So
Okay.
Programs are cool, definitely.
Mhm.
And I think we have a lot of resources that are not being adequately used by the people at EVA. And that's kind of where I got my website idea, but then I got really busy and I completely forgot about it because out of sight, out of mind, And but I think honestly, I would be very interested in going and like speaking to clubs, like especially I've talked with. I kept in contact with one of the middle schoolers I talked about with they had bullying issues and they're pretty dope. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe I can come to your guys's like LGBTQIA plus meeting, like QSA meeting, and talk about the board and talk about your rights and stuff like that. So I think I would be really interested in doing that. And would like to help facilitate.
I had an idea about similar about, and I haven't reached out to the principals to find out if this is possible or not, but tabling and doing like a get out the vote at the 2 high schools in my Chesnee area. But be there and then, be trying to pre-register them, but also then introduce myself and kind of do the awareness raising. And maybe with another elected alongside or just by myself. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. I'm not sure. I have some outreach to do to find out, but I felt the same way. Like I need to be on a campus so people know who I am, or it gives me opportunity to hear from them. They want that kind of thing.
It just reminded me of something when I think it was probably 2016, definitely. But I remember my elementary school had this. It was really fun. I remember we got to go to the cafeteria and it was all made up like a voting, and we gotta like have our little own vote for like presidents and like different things. And it felt like I sort of was valued in my voice, and I felt like very interested, and it was a lot of fun. So I think maybe we could facilitate something like that for the students to be like, hey, this is if you go to some education, you get to now do your voting thing. I think that might be fun.
Reminds me of the year I was mayor of Santa Cruz. We were going through a process of planning the next phase of improvement of city parks and recreation facilities, and I thought, okay, I want to talk to kids about this, and so I made the office, the mayor's office, made arrangements for me to go to about 4 different local schools in the city of Santa Cruz, and they just convened students. I didn't really have a lot of control over which students, so some of them, the school picked all their honor students. Another one, it was just anybody who wanted to come. And I just said, hey, I'm on city government and I want to know, what do you want for Parks and Recreation? Got great answers. The kids felt recognized and, heard. And I actually got some things worked into the budget for the Parks Department that improved some opportunities. I don't even remember what the details were, but that was really fun too. And so maybe there's even ways that, and again, I think the point is we want to be careful. We don't want to step into the role of a local school district board or staff roles and so on. But one of the things that I was thinking of when Ash was talking is, if we want to find a way to get them understanding about the education system, how it works, what our board does and so on, and promote more awareness of opportunities, there's a real difference in my memory between what came to us from the administration, like the weekly bulletin from the principal, something like that, versus what we learned from our fellow students or from just more direct experience. So that part of our communication, if we wanted to improve it to students, has got to be direct. It can't be filtered through the official communication systems and so on. Otherwise, it just has a different credibility or different, tone to it, depending on how they're hearing it.
I don't know if we have data on it, but I think word of mouth is how we get a lot of our students and people accepted into our programs. Somebody went through it and said, hey, you should check it out as well. And they almost kind of do the advertising
recruitment, yeah. I think the CIC gains people that way.
Love the notion of how do we get more student voice, and I think that's really important for us to be able to fulfill our role, because we represent not just the adults, not just the non-student adults, but we represent everybody, whether they're voting age or not, in our areas. And county-wide, since we have. However, I did try to always be respectful of the site principal, their boss, the superintendent, and Ferris. And I remember you and I had talked my first month on the job saying, I want to visit all my school boards. And when I talk to another superintendent, I feel an obligation to copy Ferris on that because they're peers. And if I talk to a principal or if I'm visiting a school site, to let that superintendent know, just to be respectful. And then therefore I let Ferris know because I'm letting the superintendent know. Well, if I'm going to visit another board, I kind of view that as my peers, you know? And that's almost between me and them. And where I've gone even more recently, and it doesn't get to the youth learner part, is when I'm trying to join a PTA equivalent for a meeting. I feel those are peers and people I represent. I don't have to get approval from anybody to do that. That's just my prerogative as an elected official to do it. And I'm really intrigued. How do I hear from more students while being respectful of the site principal, that superintendent, and our superintendent and staff, even visiting the cottage in Willow, what's this area called? Forgetting, I'm not the guy. Harvey West. In the Harvey West. We have a one-room school here in Harvey West. And I haven't visited it yet, but I would never just pop in myself because they report to Ferris. And I know from having been a city manager, having a council member show up with staff, even though we think we're nice, approachable, not coming hierarchical, that's not how it's perceived by the staff. So I would never drop in uninvited or without knowing.
Well, and I think that I appreciate that. I really appreciate the comments. I also think there's different purposes I'm hearing in the different, one is to get more input from students or community members. Another purpose I hear is getting the word out about the work that you do as county board members and also the county office of education. And then another one is for you to see what's happening, for you to increase your awareness about what's happening out there. Which may be similar to the first one, but I think that being clear as to what the purpose is, and I think, yeah, once that's defined, and how can be we could look at what are the communication protocols or whatnot. I also feel like me and the COE could do a better job in providing you with data that would also that can help inform you about where the priorities should be. So if you're looking at it and you're thinking, wow, our alternative education sites are increasing in enrollment, there may be some interest for you to find out, what districts are doing with their alternative education programs, right? And also, your methodology as board members could be asking me to do some looking into stuff as you do. You ask me to look into situations, especially when concerns are brought to you from community members. Say, can you look into this and report back to us? It could be you engaging with other board members, as you described. It could be you going to certain activities and so on. And so the approach of, again, defining what it is, and then it could be, the conclusion of that could be, can we look at the possibility of a new program that meets this need that we feel like is unmet? Or we feel like maybe superintendent to superintendent, you could have a conversation about changing the practice that could mean the district is, or it could mean people people really don't know that there's this great opportunity or this great program. What can we do to increase that awareness, right? So I'm kind of listening to these different ideas and different purposes and also different possibilities of where it can go. And I think if we can define those things and we can do a better job in providing you with data. And I do think that your role as county board members, for the most part, is to support county Office of Education programs. And so I want to make sure that you feel like you have the information that you need to understand about our mission as a COE. So like my role, let's say if you were to get into the position of saying, hey, we want to get more involved in district's financial solvency, I would say, actually, that's my role. I'm happy to share any information. There's no secrets here, but that really is not your role. But if you were to say, can we look at how we prioritize? We seem to have been doing this program, but it doesn't seem to be very effective based on the data that we're looking at. You know, is there another way of doing this, or maybe we could shift resources somewhere else? That to me is a well-informed conversation where we can figure out how to guide the decision-making to make sure that we're in alignment with, that you have enough information, and that you can ask additional questions, get more information that will influence how we implement.
You know, I've mentioned is besides the oversight role this year, and the guidebook actually handbook talks about it on pages 30 and 31, and that's our advocacy role. And so I feel part of what I see, part of my role is to be an advocate for public education. And that's not just ours.
Correct.
And so when principal I've known for 10 years asked me, why are you coming here? The board member has never turned in school ever before. And I said, well, two reasons. Politically, because this person's also an elected official. I said, whether they go to Westland, Bayview, Spring Hill, when it existed, Gateway, which is a private school, the district I represent, I still represent those families, and people are experiencing education. Some are experiencing private and public. I'm trying to understand that knowledge so I can be an advocate for public education. So, and that's beyond just our program.
It's true. It's true.
I appreciate the timeliness of this conversation because I've been invited to address the Soquel School Board. And so the idea of alignment and talking points and priorities is, I haven't even started my talking points yet, but if you both have talking points that we are developing so that we're all on message, that would be really helpful, or priorities, or if you know there are issues in Soquel, because they just threw out a general invitation after I met with Amanda. So it's really like, they want to hear, what's your role? What do you guys do over there? You know, so it's very, they're not expecting anything specific. And so it's in a few weeks. If anybody wants that, I'll provide information.
Yeah, that was
I would
one
love
of
that.
that was one of the things why I brought it up was at our agenda meeting was to come up with something that is uniform, that we're all saying the same thing, we're all on the same page, we have the same message. And then, of course, you know, there are certain things they're going to say, well, why did you get into it? That we can't script for you.
Right.
But, you know, but the message about who the board is, what we do, what our priorities are, the COE, our interaction with the districts, how we defer, that sort of thing. Those, being on the same page is really helpful. And I know, I think Nick already started like kind of putting pieces together for us.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how quickly that will come together, but I know that he said, I have some things already that we can kind of piece together for you guys. So.
I use that over mine because I'm not even sure my 3 bullets are accurate.
Okay.
I'd go with that.
I'll email them then. That'd be great. I can be the test subject of how it all
Yeah,
works out.
and I think the idea is that it's great that, you know, going into like a school district that's under like sort of your district area, but for other board members to go as well, so they can see, okay, well, let's do a learning after, you know, doing kind of thing. Like, what did we learn from that? What do we need to change? Because then they might want to go into their district schools and that sort of thing and kind of just learn from it. I wrote myself down so I didn't forget. But I think as a student trustee, I have a certain leeway, as going to school, cause I feel like I'm taken in, not necessarily in a bad way, a bit less seriously because I'm like, a child, I don't like that word, a teenager, like adolescent. And so I think it might be easier for me to be able to go there, especially to meet with the students. And then I wrote down that, and then, what I would be interested in doing is like popping into clubs or like maybe even doing an assembly where I talk about the programs that the COE has, like for mental health, educational programs, leadership programs, substance, people with like struggling with substance issues. And then also I really want to inform people about IEPs and 504 plans because I think so many students struggle and they don't realize that they can get an IEP or a 504 plan, and all they have to do is kind of like slash demand it from their county, sort of, and that could like really help them and tell them their rights about that. And then also like educational student rights, LGBTQIA plus rights, Americans with Disability Acts rights, and like telling them about what the board is. And then we were talking about voting, so I think it would be interesting to do like signing up to vote, like for the older students. And then I don't know if we're doing any driver's ed about, but we could do some education about what it is to get started for your driver's ed, like the sort of programs, things. And then also like a voting, a sort of like things that are going to be talked about on the board, or just kind of like a survey data thing where it's like asking people, oh, like what is it that you think needs the most improvement and that kind of stuff.
I really appreciate it. All the different ideas of what can be included in that. I do think that the current context that we find ourselves as a society and the concerns we have about, federal government and all kinds of, I think that your message today as a student trustee and as board members, advocating for public education, but also being a unifying voice in these tough times. I think that knowing that there are elected people who are standing up for students, for community members, that we see schools not only as places for learning. And one of the reasons I like that whole moving away from learners is because we don't just provide learning activities, we provide support activities, health services and all that. And so I think that positive messaging about what you as a board stand for, what we as COE stand for, I think is really needed right now. People are, we need to be in community as we face these tough times. So I think that this effort is really important.
I think definitely with ICE protocol, because I know ICE protocol type of thing is going out to like teachers and parents, but I don't think, as far as I know, no one's told the students about the ICE protocol, about like how you're going to stay safe on campus and that kind of stuff. I think it's very important for the students to know that as well. That kind of thing, instead of just being like, okay, adults, and then the students are left completely in the dark. So I don't know if that's what's being happening. I know a lot of classrooms have a Know Your Rights card, but I also know that we develop some sort of like plan. I'm not sure the full details of the plan, just because no one's outright talked to me about it, but I think that's also an important thing to bring up in schools.
I think a lot of people are feeling worried and apprehensive and concerned about the federal picture as far as it affects the budget for education and the cutbacks and the attacks on the DEI side and stuff like that. And people are very concerned about the impacts of the immigration attacks of ICE and on the schools. And they don't know really what we're doing. Sort of like much of what you were both just talking about. Those are like really worrying a lot of people right now. And people are already being hurt by the cutbacks and stuff. So to to let people know that our county is doing our best to cope on the budget side and doing our best to protect our students and families from these fascist attacks, excuse me. That would be good. People would feel better knowing that some of us are not caving in, not giving up, not, going along with what's happening at the national level. But I mean, I worry sometimes that if we get too prominent about how we're resisting and fighting back, that they'll make us a target. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be Trump's target. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That can be very hurtful to a lot of people. So I don't want to get their attention. But at the same time, I think our community should know that we are, the resistance or part of it, or that's not the right word to use in this context, but you know what I mean?
Let me see if I can add some context to what you're describing, because I do want to have a lunch break at 12 o'clock. And you're kind of talking about a keynote that I'm preparing here in a couple of weeks to deliver. And there's this interesting statement around the notion of that statement up top, our ability as a growing society to collectively solve challenges. There's this belief that we're falling apart, it seems. Right? Our ability to solve problems, and it's not the end of civilization in the sense of the zombie apocalypse, right? It's just our ability to pull together and figure out, hey, we got some problems. Can we get together and come up with solutions to the problems? And so where some of this is when we start to look at that, the public is incredibly pessimistic as to whether or not we have a shot at this. And so Pew Research has started looking at this stuff back in, they started asking the country back in 1974, I believe it was, do you believe that we're headed in the right direction as a country? And up until 2004, it always scored higher than 50%. 2004 was when it started to drop at the same time that opioid and drug and alcohol addiction started to climb. It was this interesting thing. And it was also about the time that we had automation starting to take over. And this is pre-AI, but it's still automation. And I like to describe it as my grandfather was that guy who picked up his giant lunch pail with his giant tools every day, and he went to go turn big wrenches in his engineering work that he did. My granddaughter now could do the same work, but it doesn't have to do anything with her big giant muscles or anything else. It's because of the automation that we've designed. And so kind of where AI is going with a lot of things. So we have this widening, all these gaps that we talk about, the folks who have and don't have, pessimism, and the country's going downhill. And this notion of, is the country going in the right direction, bottomed out January 6th when we had the little quiet protest at the Capitol. That was when it hit a low of about 12%. Okay? And it hasn't bounced back up very high in the 30s. Now, here's what's interesting about it is when you look at that, this is about this stuff for a second, because people are worried that the country's political leaders are not up to the challenge of solving America's problems in the future. And this is, again, Pew Research from 2019. I'm wondering if these numbers have changed. This number 48% are very worried, 39% fairly, 10% not too worried, and 2% not worried at all. Who are those folks? What movie are they watching?
You live in the wrong now.
The 1%.
Yes. I mean, the rest of us, they got concerns. And I would imagine those numbers have changed again since 2019. So what's interesting about this for me is we don't have belief, and it's understandable when you look at what goes on in the national conversation and all of the things that are happening, that we would be worried about our ability to solve a problem. So what they started asking was, so who's going to fix it? Take a look at who's supposed to fix it. Yeah, you think about that. Science and technology, yay! But how about the fact that we still fight with science, and depends on who your science is, right? And then it says public K-12 schools and then colleges and universities. We're the ones who are going to fix it. Yeah. And the bad news is that 77% worry we're not up to it. So yeah, we got some work to do. And as you're describing all these things, I'm just smiling because, again, you guys keep stealing all my notes. You're so ahead of me. Right? I'm not even going to give you this keynote. But it's interesting that the quality of these, they expect the quality of schools to just get worse. And I often say, when I thank people for stepping in to do this job, whether you volunteer, you're paid or whatever, you're still here for the same reason. I think this is a conversation that we really need to share with folks. And this notion of what it is that we are here for, what we're trying to do, and what that looks like. And I think about, so when you were talking about going to other places, I hope you do have a collective protocol for what that looks like when you're visiting other districts, because yes, you can't walk in and someone not see your board hat. You're a board person. It's automatic. I don't care why you're here. You're the board person. And so when I think about that, and then the notion of going to speak for folks, and I'm not just talking about my schools, I'm talking about public education. And I had I got invited to speak at the Orville Exchange Club a while ago. And I walk in and they found me on LinkedIn. And my LinkedIn profile talks about I'm the chair for the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools. So I report to the state board. We hold the meeting and we go, yep, you got an argument here. You should go see the state board, or no argument. See you later. And we have that thing. And so it says chair on there, and they invited me into the meeting to the Orville Exchange Club, apparently not realizing I'm from Orville. I'm one of them. And they said, we're so glad to have you here. The guy who greeted me, I came in about half an hour early so I could set up my laptop and get everything ready to go. And the gentleman who met me said, I am so glad you're here because public education is going to hell in a handbasket, and we need those charters. I just kind of smiled and just looked at me. I don't think this conversation is going to be what you expect, all right? And we set everything up. We laughed. We had a good conversation. Everybody comes in, and the principal from one of the high schools, my alma mater, he came in, and I looked at him and smiled. And as we started talking, he knew where I was headed with it. And I looked at him and said, so are you guys going to hold graduations? Because it was the month of May. I said, so I just need to know, are you holding graduations at the end of the month, like 3-4 weeks? You got graduations happening? He just smiled and nodded, yep, sure do. Graduating over 200? On the nose. I said, good, because and I said, I got 17 graduation ceremonies I'm going to in the next few, and I started naming off the programs. And I said, so only 3 of those programs are charters. Here's the deal. Education we've got a lot more work to do, but public education is doing fine. And then I had my conversation with them. So it wasn't just an opportunity to advocate for our county programs. It was this opportunity to advocate for public education, that we're doing what we can and we're trying to do better because the world really does want us to solve a problem. Right? And so what I'm hearing the same things. Right? How do we do that? What are the consistent messages, talking points? How do we make sure it's a way that we can also gather input from the public, because the public wanders in at the board meetings and they get that 2-minute or 3-minute window, whatever you give them. And oftentimes they don't feel like they've been heard. Right? And so, this was one of the other places where I stopped calling them my constituents. They're my neighbors, right? Because these are the folks who voted for me. They probably knew me because I coached their kid in fill in the blank, or their kid had me for something, and they know my kids. And oh, my wife taught you that. Okay, got it. Well, let's give them the vote, give them the job, right? And so they're my neighbors. And if I look at them differently like that, it's a very different conversation. And so all of the things that you're talking about, I figure it is part of your work, that you get to develop some of these talking points, what that looks like, and it is an opportunity to educate the public. So last thoughts before we break for lunch.
I think when we were talking about cutbacks, I think something I would like to do is go to the students and be like, what do you need? Like, what do we need to keep providing to you? And then for cutbacks, what would you be okay with cutting? Like, I think it should be up to them, the students, deciding like what they need and what they are okay with doing without, you know? And then also, I think for speakers not being heard, we talked about this in the Student Trustee Academy thing, and you can't necessarily get into a conversation with them. You have to like acknowledge it because of the Brown Act. You can't like bring up stuff that wasn't beforehand introduced and like put out there that you can talk about. So I think it'd be important to like have a sort of little reminder, be like, we are taking into consideration what you are saying and we hear you, but we can't necessarily like get into it right now because it'd be a Brown Act violation.
When they come in public comment, to engage in that conversation about something that's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
I was also just I really like this idea of scholar. So I'd like to maybe after lunch, we could see if that is something that you'd like to see, is that we start using the term scholar, as kind of, when we look at our, this term kind of as a broader term. I'm excited about that.
It seems like lifelong
Learner.
learner, and I think of like, physiology is not the right word, the talking and the questioning, maybe Greek or Romans. You guys know what I'm talking about? I think it starts with a P. Philosophy, yeah. Yeah.
I like the word, but when I was in about maybe the fifth or sixth grade, some speaker referred to us students as scholars, and I thought that's bullshit.
So I start off where it feels elitist, but hearing the one student voice in the room saying it works for them, and hearing an example from another school that is trying to overcome the impacts of elitist culture makes me more comfortable with embracing the term scholar as part of the visioning of what we're moving towards. But I start off worrying it comes across a little elitist, but part of that's having to overcome that.
So we want to broaden the term.
Yeah.
And there isn't a good translation into Spanish.
Pardon?
Oh,
There's not a good translation into Spanish, so just, we need to keep that.
I kind of thought about it sort of in the same way, kind of like in overreach, but I like the connotation of it's about being a lifelong learner. From, you know, our pre-K all the way through adult learners, you know, and continuing learners. So I like the idea of like that lifelong learner position.
Yeah.
I'm still warming up to the scholar kind of thing, but I love the mentality that it can give a student, an individual, like, yeah, I am, like, that's who I am, a scholar, I'm a lifelong learner, so, yeah.
Just would be for me, the population at Chrysalis, the scholars and families at Chrysalis, today can reframe it so it's embraced as broadly as possible. Then I think it's a home run.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's work on that.
I also, like, something I think of when I think of scholar is like a level. You know, you just are really dedicated and love learning. It's something you just want to continue to do.
Great, fine. Now we're stretching it into something new and more brilliant and engaging. It's all your fault, Ash. All right, so what I would love to do is say, let's take a little break for grabbing food. We only have about another hour, maybe another hour, 15 minutes or so of conversation. So don't rush your lunch, taste it. Okay, take your time, right? And then we'll get started whenever you are ready to get started again. And so who was it that needed to be gone by 2?
Well, and actually my daughter's game changed, so closer to 1 would be
Yeah.
better. Moved up an hour.
I thought we were targeting noon, but I can go to 1:30, so.
Probably have to leave by 1:10.
I'll do my best to be done at 1:05. So I can give you like 5 minutes of the gift of time.
Okay.
The rest of you get like a full gift of an hour. But if you get, we'll give you like a 5-minute gift. You would waste an extra anyhow, or you'd be like me. Right? So yeah. So gather food and then we'll get started. Dial it up. or less, in case anyone has to, like, go and see a sporting event or something. Super Bowl wasn't for a couple weeks. Oh, anyway, so, I want to take it into this notion where you really spent a lot of your time, and that's your community leadership. So on the back of your, I'm sure if it's, yes, page 5 of your doctor's report. Question number 51. The board maintains a positive working relationship with school district board in the county. You know, maybe you should just take a few minutes and have that conversation about what's going on, because you've been starting to identify some things about that. As much as you're talking about the community and being out there and developing this notion of how you elevate the mission, I thought you might want to just take a couple minutes and talk about protocol and what you have, what you don't have, what should the protocol look like. And again, I don't expect you to fully solve it right now, but I think it's a conversation worth starting at least. Okay?
I would say I don't recall us having a specific written out protocol. I kind of just know that the known coming in and talking with people that you just don't show up to a school. You go through the county office and usually through Ferris's office that you want to go visit a location. I think that there are several of us that know trustees in the districts, and so we kind of feel like we have a good relationship and at least an understanding of how we defer. I'll be honest, I probably was one of the ones that said often, because I haven't made it a point to go to, I attend like district meetings, like either virtually or in person, but to go to each of the individual schools or the district meetings. So I think it would be important if we had like that protocol so that anybody new coming in understood, well, what happens if, a community member asks me about what's happening at the district level? Or what if they invite me to come speak? What do I say? Do I talk to Ferris first? Do I blah, blah, blah? What tools do I use? And so I think it'd be important for us to have a written protocol. So not just for us, but for anybody coming in after us, is that there is a common agreement and understanding of what that looks like.
I have felt envious of Greg coming in, who has been much more than I ever do, going around and showing up at meetings and stuff. And I think it's admirable. I've been trying to get myself to think about my schedule and where I could go and get to, when I can get to things at what time and stuff like that. Trying to push myself a little bit along those lines, because I think that is good that we're visible. But I also think we have to do it right, not showing up unexpected. And, somebody said earlier, if you're a board member and you're in a district board meeting, it's not like you're just invisible there, even if they don't know you personally, you're in a role, you're not just yourself. That's something different I forget sometimes, especially when I know other board members in districts or stuff.
And there's a difference between saying I'm here as a parent, I am here as a community member, versus I am here as a trustee of the County Board of Education. So when I'm watching and people ask me, if I'm at the PBUSD, because that falls under my district area, it's like I'm here as a community member because I don't have a child in the district, and I'm also a county board member, so I have a different perspective. So I might, when they ask me questions, I might just say that I'm here as a community member, listening and learning. But as far as like being able to go out and visit, like not everybody, I'm sort of semi-retired, semi-retired. But I think that maybe part of what we could do, and what I learned a lot from without having to go to individual schools, is participating in Insight Education. That was so eye-opening, and it gave me an opportunity to be with the community at the same time visiting schools and learning about the schools around our district. So if we could make that a part and hold space in each of those classes for a trustee to attend, I think that it's immeasurable. I mean, whether you've already done it, maybe you do it again, because sometimes the program is a little different, the community members are different. So that's
Yeah, I did it during COVID, so we didn't have any field trips. It was kind of a
that's the
bummer.
fun part.
I know.
It was midway through before I started on the board. soon as I heard about it, I was invited even without a slot.
Yeah.
I think you were involved. And I went to all the ones that were available and it was great. And since I have had the luxury of doing it, a couple thoughts. One, I did come up with a protocol that I felt was respectful to follow each of them. I was going as a new board member to introduce myself and to understand the educational services and the facilities in the district I represent. And I did it with public schools, the charter school, all the COE offices, Save the Cottage, and the private schools as well. I went to all of them. And I've met with the boards of each, as well as toured the facilities of each, and went to the graduations of each. And that was part of my learning curve, as I've shared with Ferris. This academic year, I'm not nearly being as aggressive. I have real metrics I'd set out to visit a school every week, you know, just because I'm a metrics guy. I had to have these goals or I would hold myself accountable. Now I've tapered way back, but I love the notion of having protocols because there wasn't anything I read in the board policies when I came on board. I brought it up with Ferris and he kind of said, here's what I was doing, and he thought it seemed appropriate. But I think having something to guide board members when they do have the capacity to do it, it was easier for me because I had, being a newbie, I wasn't showing up for any agenda. I wasn't showing up to address an issue at PBUSD or something like that, which I think we then do have to keep our roles circumspect. But just, I'm here to introduce myself and learn about you. It was a pretty easy thing to say. But I think having it beyond that learning curve, what's an accepted norm, would be really helpful.
I had an awkward moment. Golf school, which I live just around the block from, and the city school district wanted to buy a building across the street, the old Seabright Broadway, whatever it was called, the center for a lot of nonprofits and community stuff. And the neighbors were kind of concerned about that, and I'm in that neighborhood, and people were calling me, and I, at that point, Andrea, one of our previous education directors, she sat at the desk for a little while and then retired. Angela, yeah, was on the school board there, and I happened to be talking to her. I said, "Hey, what about this?" And then I ran into Chris Monroe, who's the superintendent, and I suddenly began feeling like, "Whoa, I wonder what is my role here, because I'm a concerned neighbor, but I'm also on the board." And so I kind of backed out of it. I told the other neighbors, I don't think I'm the right person to be in their face about this question. But it was, I did not know exactly what was the right thing, because I certainly have rights as a neighbor to be concerned about development in my neighborhood. But, you know, what was the protocol for how do I address them and when and in what circumstances, and also just what's my role? What's the important part of who I am here, you know, showing up?
I haven't faced that.
Because whether
I've spoken on
Yeah, because that was an issue. That wasn't
Yeah.
just introducing myself.
And I think because whether we believe it or not, we might have weight in that issue, or they might think that we have weight. It's like, well, why didn't you do anything about it? Well, let's, you know, this is not my role as county board trustee. This is a district, and as a member, as a neighbor, this is my concern. But yeah, some people feel like you have some kind of.
Why aren't you using all your clout?
Exactly. So it's really
Well,
important for
I
us to
just did.
understand, what those boundaries are and those lines are and our role in it. And, you know, clearly communicating that to the people that are asking us to do more than what we can. Yeah.
And I've also conscientiously not visited school sites out of my trustee area because I didn't have that argument of why I was doing so. You know, other than COE stuff, which is different, because we all oversee that. So like Watsonville High, Harbor High. I think it's, unless it was part of a COE program, I don't think I'd ever asked to tour those because they're not in the district I represent.
Well, we do have, you know, countywide
Responsibility.
purview, you know, so we, you know, I wouldn't say you shouldn't do it, but I think with care and with respect for the people there.
The ones in my trustee area were enough.
Plenty to do. No, I think defining your, when speaking, you all have different roles, as community members, neighbors, parents, students, and be really clear when we're not there on behalf of, the board. To say I'm here as a parent and a community member, being really clear and that you're not speaking, because I think that even as you all know, when you speak as an individual, you don't speak on behalf of the board unless that has been discussed, agreed upon, and acted upon, that we're gonna, I'm here to present the resolution on behalf of the board because the resolution, is approved or so on. And then only in those rare cases, as an individual trustee, and often we have to go. I remember speaking at a Watsonville City Council, and I made it really clear I'm not speaking as the county superintendent of schools. I'm speaking as a member of the Watsonville community, and made it really clear. And even in that case, people were unhappy that, because the perception was that whether you say it or not, you're still bringing that weight of that role that you play. And so I think it's important to be thoughtful and transparent. And I like the idea of having a written out protocol that we can all review and agree on and say, this is how and when. And usually I think it's the surprise. One time, Leanne and I decided that she should go to a board meeting, observe something, and we made the mistake of not giving the superintendent a heads up. And so here was the CBO of the county board, of the County Office of Education, in their board meeting, just sitting quietly, didn't say a word. And it took almost a year to rebuild the trust with that superintendent. They felt like it was just their presence was somehow, and there were questions and there were issues that there was a reason why we were there, but it really hurt the relationship. And I think that's true for your role as well, is that the more transparent we can be and want to clarify why, I'm going to introduce myself. Great, wonderful. There's a heads up there, or I'm there as a community member. I'm concerned about this new acquisition, and I just want you to know that I'm going to be there, but I will not be there as a board member. I think having that upfront conversation with the president of the board and the superintendent seems really appropriate, and including me in that communication as well, so that we're all really clear as to, and it goes a long way. It's a protective conversation that will protect relationships.
And as an indirect line, I was thinking when you were talking about sort of how we're perceived, is also in social media. So when we have lots of posts, some of them are very divisive, and we're commenting or liking, people are, if they know that you are in, a board or a trustee, and they don't understand that there is a difference, it's really hard to communicate. I am responding as, a community member, but I think it's just being aware, like, how do we want to handle it as county boards of trustees when there is something going on at any one of the districts and someone posts and we like it? People will go in there, oh, well, they agree. Like, how dare they? They don't have the whole picture, or whatever that might be. So perhaps that could be part of the protocol, how we, not in everything in general, but things that related to education in our districts.
Well, and SB 707
Yes.
specifically calls that out, so I think it'd be good for us to do some work on that too.
No,
Detail
I'm
out.
conscious not commenting.
Exactly,
on
same.
board
I just
members
don't.
On social media.
Just read it.
so 707.
Your Brown Act violation.
Yeah. And so
Too many people commenting or liking.
I know that set a little boundary. Me commenting on a public issue, or any of us commenting on a public issue on our social media sites is not something the board can constrain. I don't believe.
No, I don't think that's the intention. It's more about being aware that there's not more than, a quorum commenting on the exact same thing. And then,
You're saying, could you repeat your statement?
Well, I guess if there was an issue that came up on social media, I wanted to comment on it. I'm not sure how the board constrains board members' individual social media.
And do you mean an education issue or just more general?
In general, I mean, I think that becomes a gradation, like if it's a COE issue, let's say somebody, either way, they say, I hate the cottage program. My kid went there and it was a disaster. Well, first, out of deference to staff, I wouldn't respond to that on social media because that's in my sphere of influence, I guess. And I have an obligation to the organization. However, if it's somebody commenting about development in Harvey West and Costco's decided to follow Safeways lead in Seattle and build a 10-story building. They're not doing this, by the way. A 10-story building.
We just want to make sure everyone knows.
No, I'm not sure there's a policy the board could adopt that affects that. Unless I were to say, as a county board of education member, I oppose this project. I think that might be inaccurate because I don't have a role as a county board of education member.
I think it also makes a difference of whether or not you have a private profile or you have a profile as, Greg Larson, County Board of Education. Then you can't mute anybody. People get to comment. And you can't regulate what goes on. That, which is the reason why most people in elected positions don't have those, because then you'd have to be aware. But I don't think that we're talking about like regulating trustees to have an opinion about anything in general. We just have to be really careful. I mean, one, be respectful of our role as County Board of Education, not commenting on district issues, but also being aware that multiple of us, a quorum, are not commenting similarly on the exact same thing, because then that's where we run into the issue.
If it's issues beyond our purview, all 9 of us could say, we hate or like X nationally or internationally. And if it's not.
Potentially, I would not risk it. I tend to look at it first and say, like, anybody else in?
In terms of being correct. If
Yes.
it's not in our purview, I can talk about it all I want to. The challenge that you have to also be mindful of is if I don't have a page that's Mike Walsh, the politician, if I have it or don't, doesn't matter. If on my personal page, I'm putting the work that, again, wherever I go, I'm wearing the board hat. So if I start posting it on my page, all I've done is just extend my page to my public persona as the board elected. And so now once again, where people get in trouble is because I don't like what Greg said, I block his statement. Now we got problems. And it's like, whoops, sorry, Mike, you made it. You should have just put your kid's picture up there and everybody would run away. Right? I want to brag about my child one more time. Oh, dear God. And off they go to someplace else that's more controversial. And that's what people are looking for. So I have been accused of being a racist. Forgot her name now. Fortune. Margaret Fortune was formerly the president for the California Charter Schools Association. And we co-authored a letter when I was the president for CSBA on doing better by students when you look at the dashboard, whether it's the African-American students, the Native American students. Let's put money in that spot. When we get that boat lifted, that tide raises, then we work on the next one and keep lifting it up. And the usual trolls came out. Saying, oh, that's the most racist thing I've ever heard. You blah, blah, blah. And I can hear the little voice in my head, don't kite. Don't comment. They're looking for sunshine. Just leave it alone. But I wanted to jump back in so badly. And it's just like, no, let it go. Because there were plenty of questions I wanted to ask to walk them through that logic. And I realized, hey, I don't give a darn about my questions and my logic. They're just, that's an opportunity to just be seen. Right? Let it go. But it's the slippery slope. You just kind of get careful, because what I think I hear is that you have to be very careful with it when you're trying to put it in alignment with what you guys talked about. How do you elevate the community, the mission? And if I suddenly lock into it with Greg, where he's chiming in because you don't like, no matter what I say, then I've got to be mindful of creating space for that. how do I just continue to highlight, here's the other stuff that's really going on, and just not lock in with you, right? So it's a tricky thing to do and place to be, but yes, you are wearing that hat. So what I would love for you guys to do in the last 4 minutes, give your best advice.
Could I just give
Sure,
a couple
absolutely.
clarifications?
Because Greg's thinking about how long he needs to think of his 4-minute advice anyhow. So go right ahead.
Okay, two clarifications. One is that, so if on my Facebook, I have a personal Facebook and I have a election Facebook about being on the board, which it doesn't do anything, but the only thing I've ever posted is our resolutions once they pass. Does that then kick me into that obligation to stay public?
If it's, and I thought if it was public and people comment on it, you can't block that.
Because I tend to not be very social, and so I don't take comments from anybody but my friends on my sites, because and I don't even go there except once a month or more rarely. So that was my first question. I'm not clear on that. And then secondly, if I say there's some issue and I say, well, I'm in the education world, and from an education standpoint, this is a bad move because it's going to do X, Y, or Z. I think I'm allowed to say that, right? It's not about something the board voted on or has a policy on, but I'm just saying from my perspective in the world of education, if you allow that to happen, it's going to damage education.
Yeah, if I could, so the first part is really, I think, about the right of people to have to respond to you as a public official, right? So if you delete somebody's comment because you don't like it, and in their perception, they're talking to you as a public official, an elected official, then you're limiting their free speech. So that's a point of, they're on the side of not trying to limit people, even if, because of that one time you posted something that was a resolution, somebody can argue that, and a reasonable person in a court of law may say, well, actually, you were acting like a public official, even though most of your pictures are found. And so and the courts have generally been siding with protecting free speech for the community to speak to you or to share their concerns.
Does that mean I have to accept everybody's posts, or can I just still have it only be open to my comments?
So, like limiting people's access or making a person could make a claim. That doesn't mean that they would win or anything like that. On the other side, though, your free speech, as I think Greg was mentioning, is not limited. I think it would be problematic for you to speak on behalf of the board when you're really just speaking as an individual or as an individual trustee. If you speak as if you're representing the board and that the board believes, or you make the community believe the board believes this and you're their representative, it's not a free speech issue. It's now an issue of you misrepresenting the stance of the board and speaking out of turn. And so I think that's why it's important to be clear that you're speaking as an individual. And even if you do speak as a trustee, which you can speak as an individual trustee and saying, I believe, that public education is really good or whatever, that's totally appropriate. I don't think there's anything but just keep in mind, if you're, I would say just be really clear as to who are you speaking as, so that it makes it less difficult for a community member to interpret your role or who you're speaking on behalf of. How does that sound, Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say, you nailed it perfectly. I thought also see legal. And I think here's the reason why I always tell everybody, really be mindful. Because right now, this closure is, again, the quality of the member relationships within your board. And again, you've got green and I don't have the color. I've got the black and white, but you guys love each other. And it's what comes through in your diagnostic, your evaluation. So because of that, that's the closure part of it. It's a high level of closure. It increases that bottom line, which is what again, everything you guys talked about, it's as if you knew exactly what my notes were all about. Is this right here is bullet number 2, brokerage. Remember, influence on outside stakeholders and those with influence. Because of this is part of the conversation that's coming out in here today, which is really clear about being more clear with the community and educating and helping them understand, getting information. All this stuff is you're going to be really good at it because your closure is really high, because you guys really take care of each other and work through difficult conversations. conversations. Even the conversation about the person who's missing and trying to figure out what do we do to support. I like those conversations. And my thing is just simply to say, yeah, you're headed in the right direction. Continue to be open and intentional with these conversations like you're doing. Because yeah, they are challenging to do in the moment when you're having the board meeting, but when you have study sessions, that's really why I always tell folks, study sessions just give you permission to have a little bit different conversation because there's no action involved. So we're just digging through our ideas and trying to come up with a common understanding. That's how study sessions work really well. And you guys are having the conversations again that move you in the right direction. So I just say there's a reason when I looked at it and I saw the results the other morning, I just smiled. I was like, this is going to be a fun conversation. Because I've been to boards where it's the opposite. And yay, those are a lot more work involved. And this is, I love it. So with 3 minutes to spare, I want to turn it back over to you and just say thank you for letting me come hang out with you. Food was good. And the conversation was even better. So it's all yours, however you want to land it. Because what I was going to say is if you would like, I'll give you 20 seconds or less. What's your advice based on if you were giving someone else advice for how they can stay focused and not off into the weeds and creating the challenges based on your conversation today? What's your 20-second advice? Everybody think for a second. You only have 20 seconds or less to give your advice to this board. How do you stay focused on growing it and be mindful of how you elevate the mission and stay in this place where you're in such a great space? How do you do that with intention? So 20 seconds or less for whoever wants to go first.
I would say like think about the students like as individuals and as a whole group that we're supposed to be, or that our job is to like provide for them and help them and educate them.
Who do you want to have go next? You get to pick who's going next.
Scott, pretty well together.
Nicely done.
Thank you. I would say really check the relationships. The relationships are kind of foundational, and let really invest in that. And so I think in the same way, we don't want to be too nice because that also, if it creates a situation where I really appreciate, that Ash brought up the issue with Ed, because in some ways we were skirting around that issue and it is a fundamentally important issue. And so I think trusting that the relationship is going to keep us safe and we can address tough issues and disagreements. I think that's where we want to be. So I'd say strong relationships and tough conversations is where we're at our best. And I'm going to pass it over to Bruce.
I would just say very much the same thing, that I think actually a real key thing for us is to continue to care about each other. Because that's the human and the heart part of what we're doing is really the most fundamental. So if we can be that way, then that radiates out from here.
Who do you have go next?
Rachel.
Putting students first, keeping open communication and having respect. And I think the way we can start doing that is getting to know each other a little bit more on a one. I mean, we all have our own professional obligations and personal obligations. And, sometimes these are the only times that we get to know each other. I learned a little bit more about some common people that we know. And so I think making time to get to know each other on a personal level so that we can put those things in place and build that kind of trust. And Sanchez.
I think what's really important is compassion. We don't really understand what people are going through or how they're feeling, but I think if we can listen, not necessarily judge, I think it's definitely one of the reasons why our board does so good and all of us enjoy it so much is because I never feel judged. I feel that I can speak, that I can voice my opinion and not create tension. So I definitely feel like that's a very important, something that I value and that others might be able to.
20 seconds. continue the relationship building is number one, you know, having one-on-one coffees periodically or Zooms, it's just great for that. Understanding where I'm coming from, as long as you don't violate the ground. Second, having policies and guidelines, recognizing that we all bring different strengths and capacities to our role and respecting that difference, be the capacity time, be it, you're probably the one person who joined the board knowing what an LCAP was. You know, and yet you're the newest board member. You know, recognizing we all bring different strengths and experience and respecting that difference and letting it express itself and be.
You all said things I would have said, so I'm trying to come up with something new. But I will say that one of my takeaways after being appointed to the board, when I went home, because nobody was here that day, because I didn't know how it would go, no assumptions, was I just told my husband, I'm like, I felt so appreciated and so respectful or respected. And part of it is I think you guys had seen my applications. You knew about me. And my curiosity was, now I need to get to know each of them because I don't know anything about anybody else. So the relationships and the trust part, and then needing to have some of those one-on-ones. I've done some, but not all of them. So, so I definitely think the relationship part, and then being mission-driven and remember who our constituency is. And then also the Ted Lasso line, operate from curiosity, not judgment, which Abel said.
Yeah, you kind of reminded me. I almost went on a break. You took my
So I was
notes.
gonna say that next.
Again, I'll give my last words. So the program that I've spent a lot of years with, this is a mark that will never leave my soul. It's hard to hate someone when you know their story. And that's, and I always tell the kids at the beginning of the day, not only that, but by the end of the day, you'll know why you love some people because you know their story. And their stories have kept me focused throughout my 15 years. And I thought I knew their stories pretty well because of my work in education prior. And now, as I've seen more and more, it's like, no, I'm locked in. I'm crystal clear. Nothing distracts me. And which gets back to that notion of who do we serve? And that's always, for me, the most important conversation is who do we serve and what do they need? My job is to figure out how to go get that. That's my advocacy role. So I think, yeah, everything you guys said, amen. Thank you. And now, Madam President, charge, Madam Chair, it's yours again. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for another wonderful session of encouraging conversation and some actions to come out of it. And thank everyone else for being here. And we will adjourn at 1:10.
Thank you, Dee, for organizing everything.
Yes.
Stand for motion.
Yes.